Chapter 1245. The blurry black shadow attached itself to Yang Qing's body. The terrifying aura of nothingness around Yang Qing seemed to be unable to affect the black shadow. As the black shadow approached him, the scene in front of Yang Qing suddenly changed and images appeared. Yang Qing, who had turned into a black water man and seemed emotionless, suddenly trembled at this moment. His eyeballs also moved slightly and he seemed to have some vitality. But with this change, Yang Qing's state also broke away from the despairing Yin realm and returned to his original appearance. His soul and the heaven and earth avatar above his head seemed to be a little weak. That was the result of being attacked by Shen Qifeng's reincarnation song. But at this moment, Yang Qing seemed to be completely unaware of this. He just stood there blankly with light flickering in his eyes. His mind seemed to be in a mess. He snorted, "Ghost terror curse." In the past, before the battle of exterminating Xianyi, Wang Lin had fought with the disobedient official king, Sikongyu, and experienced Sikongyu's strange and overbearing ghost terror curse. Afterwards, he had also introduced it to his fellow sect members, so Yang Qing immediately reacted and knew that he had been hit by Sikongyu's ghost terror curse. But this curse was evil and came from the heart. Rather than saying it was a supernatural power, it was more like a thought seed. It was rooted in one's soul and was difficult to resist with ordinary magic power. It was mysterious and had no attack power. Its function was to dig out the deepest fear in the heart of the person who was implanted, and then magnify the fear. In this process, the ghost terror curse would grow stronger because of the increasing fear of the person who was implanted. When it reached a certain level, it would completely integrate with the cultivator's soul. Once Sikongyu removed the ghost terror curse, the person who was implanted would have his soul shattered and die. At this moment, the scenes that flashed before Yang Qing's eyes made him shocked. Countless unbearable memories surged out from the depths of Yang Qing's heart and kept flashing in front of him. The cloudwater cave that had been burnt to a crisp, the charred, incomplete, and unrecognizable bones, Feng Ting, who had finally reunited but suddenly turned into a venomous ghost, and the figure that disappeared in the poisonous fire that filled the sky. After many years of Lin Feng's careful teaching, after going through all kinds of things, Yang Qing's temperament and willpower are no longer the same as before. Cowardice and hesitation have already completely disappeared from his body, difficult to find anymore. Death, danger, and all kinds of hardships, Yang Qing was no longer afraid. He would not be timid or anxious. He could deal with them with confidence and calmness. In the past, he had a faint sense of inferiority and uneasiness. He often doubted himself. He was afraid that he would let down his master, Lin Feng, and the celestial sect of wonders. Now he had disappeared. Instead, he firmly believed that he could bring honor to his master and the sect. He cherished the sect, but he didn't rely on it, nor would it become a burden to him. He knew his own path, walked calmly, and naturally shouldered his own responsibilities. To this day, Yang Qing, who had already been reborn, had a tenacious and indomitable will. Even the frightening ghost curse continued to dig up all kinds of past that he once feared in his heart. But in the end, it was all in vain. Everything seemed to have become a thing of the past. However, after the continuous changes in the picture, the final fixed scene made Yang Qing suddenly shocked. That was the last thing he wanted to face. In the deepest part of his heart, there was only fear, and it was also the greatest fear of his life. The sandstone that sealed the last wisp of Feng Ting's remnant soul shattered in front of him. It turned into ashes and no longer existed. Her last hope was extinguished just like that. This terrifying and desperate scene made Yang Qing feel a chill all over her body. One figure after another appeared in front of him. All of them looked very familiar, but at the same time he felt a sense of unfamiliarity. A beautiful purple-clothed girl came before him. It was his junior sister, Luo Qinggu. Luo Qinggu pinched a sword formula with her left hand. The index and middle fingers of her right hand stood together like a sword. A bright yellow sword light extended from her fingertips. Although it was a 3-foot sword, it did not have any murderous aura. Instead, it was full of vitality. The name of the sword was Kuan Yuan Life Spirit Sword. One sword gave birth to all living beings. Infinite vitality was on the sword edge. It took the essence of the vast earth and turned it into its own sword will. Then it refined the central earth divine light in the living soil, and turned it into the precious light of the Kuan Yuan divine sword. It could give birth to life and catalyze vitality. However, Luo Qinggu looked at the sandstone that turned into ashes. She shook her head and dispersed the sword light. She looked at Yangqing and said apologetically, "Senior brother Yangqing, I'm sorry." Luo Qinggu was really powerless. Another purple-clothed scholar in a white robe appeared. It was Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi pinched a magic art. A clear and sweet sound of phoenix came from the void. A phoenix shadow formed by flowing lights appeared in front of Yangqing. It kept circling in the air. There was a flame burning on the surface of its body. In the flame, there was the nirvana of the phoenix. The mysterious aura of rebirth came from the fire. However, after circling for a while, the sandstone that turned into ashes did not show any signs of recovery. After circling for a while, the phoenix shadow fluttered its wings and flew high, dissipating in the void. The nirvana of the phoenix spell did not work. Zhu Yi sighed and came to Yangqing's side. He said softly, "Fifth junior brother, my condolences." Next to Zhu Yi, a tall and handsome young man appeared. His long black hair hung loosely behind him. A bright light shot out from the middle of the young man's eyebrows. It contained all things in the world, and the mystery of the changes of the ancient times. The light seemed to make everything it encountered return to its original point, back to the starting point, back to the origin. However, the light shrouded the void where the sandstone was destroyed. Under the light, there was still no change in the void. "Fifth senior brother, I'm sorry." This tall young man was naturally Shi Tianhao. His expression was also unusually solemn. There was no smile on his face. On the left and right of Yangqing, another figure appeared. One was a handsome young man in a black robe and a purple tight suit. The other was a cold young man in a purple robe with long white hair hanging loosely behind him. They were Xiao Yan and Wang Lin. The two walked out, one on the left and one on the right. They came to the two ends of the destroyed sandstone, and stood face to face. Passing on the torch, surviving from the ashes. Yellow Springs Death Realm, Extreme Tao Rebirth. Xiao Yan and Wang Lin both let out a low shout at the same time. And then two streams of vigorous mana surged out at the same time, supporting the destructive sand together. Countless mysterious white lights surged non-stop. However, no matter how hard the two tried, there was no change. It was all in vain. Xiao Yan and Wang Lin were silent. Xiao Yan's gaze was extremely solemn. Wang Lin's gaze was even colder. Yu Hongyan and Li Yuanfang also appeared in front of Yangqing. They stood together with Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao and Luo Qinggu in silence. The seven of them suddenly raised their hands and pointed at the void. Then a five-colored light suddenly fell from the sky. It was a female phoenix that was completely golden and flashed with five-colored light. In addition to being golden, this phoenix seemed to be engraved with 5 characters. The head character was virtue, the wing character was obedience, the back character was righteousness, the belly character was faith, and the crown character was benevolence. It was the current Phoenix clan master, the great Phoenix sage of the Dharma-ending realm. Xiao Yan and the others bowed to the great Phoenix sage. "Senior, please save us." The great Phoenix sage let out a long and elegant cry. In the midst of the cry, blood gradually seeped out around his eyes. The fiery phoenix blood exuded an extremely powerful aura of life, burning in the void. The concept was similar to Zhu Yi's Phoenix Nirvana incantation, but more mysterious and powerful. The burning phoenix blood wrapped around the gradually disappearing dust, but it was still unable to save the situation. Seeing this, the great Phoenix sage shook his head, indicating that he was powerless. Everyone was slightly sad, but they pulled themselves together. Then they raised their hands together to form a seal and hit the ground. Black light surged on the ground, and a figure emerged. It looked like a teenager with pitch-black pupils. It was the reborn king of the underworld. However, at this moment, the king of the underworld's entire body was bound by purple clouds, and it seemed like he had been captured. The king of the underworld looked at the shattered dust, and could not help but shake his head and laugh. Her soul has been completely destroyed, and she has returned to nirvana. Even I can't save her. In the whole world, from ancient times until now, no one has been able to save her. Everyone glared at him angrily. The king of the underworld smiled slightly, and did not say much. At this moment, the purple clouds between heaven and earth were vast and mighty, and a young man in purple clothes stepped out from it. When Xiao Yan and the others saw him, they all knelt on the ground. "Master!" Yang Qing stood stiffly on the spot and looked at Lin Feng blankly. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Lin Feng walked to Yang Qing's side, and with a flick of his finger he shot out streams of purple clouds, which enveloped the sand. However, as he circulated his mana, the shattered sand could not recover in the end. "Little Qing, it's just like what the king of the underworld said. Since ancient times, no one has been able to save Fengting. Even I, as your master, am unable to do so." Lin Feng said regretfully. "I told you before that if you keep that sand, you still have a chance of survival. But now there's no turning back." The king of the underworld laughed loudly at the side. "Even after a long time of rebirth, I have not fallen to such a state. This woman is not dead, but her soul has been completely destroyed, and she has been annihilated into nothingness. She has completely disappeared from this great heaven primordial world, and will never exist again. The world of the living, the world of the dead, they no longer exist." There was no light in Yang Qing's eyes. She stared blankly at the empty void in front of her, and she was lost. In the real world, Yang Qing also stood stiffly on the spot. Thousands of emotions kept flashing in her eyes, and she could not calm down. And on the other side, Shen Qifeng, who was hit by his solitary lunar slumber divine ability, was also gradually breaking apart, and he was walking towards death. However, a strange rune suddenly appeared in the Nirvana Pearl. As the rune flickered, a figure appeared from the Nirvana Pearl, and it gradually turned into a physical body, leaving the pearl. It was Shen Qifeng. Luckily, his magic didn't break the life and death reincarnation talisman that I used for rebirth. Otherwise, I would have really died this time. Shen Qifeng's face was pale, and he stared at Yang Qing. Sikongyu smiled. "It's been hard on you, but this old man can get the best ghost curse user. He's even better than Zhang Lai, and better than ever." Chapter 1246. Shen Qifeng's face was pale. After being hit by Yang Qing's solitary slumber, even though he managed to escape with the death substitution resurrection technique, his primordial spirit was still injured. He stared at Yang Qing and saw that Yang Qing was standing stiffly in the air. The muscles on his face were twitching and his eyes were flickering nonstop. It was obvious that he was in a state of extreme chaos. "Has the fear in his heart been completely triggered by you?" Shen Qifeng looked at this scene. "But he seems to be doing his best to suppress the fear in his heart." Sikongyu said indifferently. "Everyone wants to be fearless, but they don't know that fear can often make us stronger and push us to move forward. Fear is our greatest source of trouble, but it is also our greatest motivation to move forward. It is the strongest power in this world." Sikongyu smiled leisurely. "Cultivators of my generation work hard to cultivate and seek for longevity. Isn't it to resist death? Core formation, nascent soul formation, primordial spirit Tao, 3 tribulations of creation, refining creation artifacts, cultivating divine arts, increasing magic power. Along the way, who isn't like this? The fear of life and death, the fear of extinction. All these push us forward." Sikongyu looked up at the sky and sighed. "The power of fear is truly mysterious." Shen Qifeng stood beside him and said silently, "I admire disobedient official king's wise words. But now let us deal with this person as soon as possible." Sikongyu said, "That's right. Although he is fearful of his growth and his cultivation foundation, he is the best ghost curse practitioner I have ever seen in my life. However, the most important thing right now is His Majesty's great plan. Everything should be done according to His Majesty's great plan. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, we can only kill this child now." As he spoke, Sikongyu pointed his finger, and the ferocious ghost temple flew towards Yang Qing. The huge ghost on top of the temple stretched out its hands and surrounded Yang Qing from both sides. The ghost continued to let out sharp ghost howls, further increasing the effect of the fright ghost curse, causing the flickering light in Yang Qing's eyes to become more and more urgent. The huge ferocious ghost temple itself smashed towards Yang Qing's head. Shen Qifeng activated the Nirvana Pearl, and displayed the Nirvana avatar. Then he added power to his body and pointed his finger at Yangqing. A golden light shot out towards Yangqing. The ghost howls above the ferocious ghost temple shook the heavens and suppressed Yangqing's soul. At the same time, the fear in Yangqing's heart became more and more intense. In Yangqing's sea of consciousness, it was as if there were countless figures surrounding him. All kinds of voices rose and fell one after another, forming a buzzing sound. Gradually, people were unable to understand the specific meaning of the words, leaving only a noisy noise. My condolences. There's no hope. There's nothing we can do. Give up. Restrain yourself. There's no hope. There's Yangqing. Qing was Shen. There. Shen. Yangqing ignored Sikongyu and Shen Qifeng's attacks. Her mind was completely immersed in the nightmarish scene. But at some point in time, Yangqing's dull eyes suddenly moved. The gaze in his eyes gradually became calm and serene. The chaos and fear in his eyes gradually dissipated and became unprecedentedly bright. A faint smile even appeared on his face. However, when Sikongyu and Shen Qifeng saw the smile, an ominous feeling rose in their hearts. Sikongyu frowned. At this moment, he felt that the fright ghost curse he implanted in Yangqing's soul was gradually disappearing. His fright ghost curse didn't contain any magic power. It was purely a will. It was hard for the opponent to remove it with magic power. However, when the opponent removed the fright ghost curse with his will, Sikongyu couldn't help the fright ghost curse resist. Yangqing raised his head and looked at Sikongyu and Shen Qifeng who were attacking him. Slowly he said, "Fear can indeed give us motivation. However, it doesn't mean that hope is extinguished. No matter how slim the hope is, it won't affect me from doing my best, even until the very last moment. If you stop moving because of fear, you will be defeated by fear. How can you talk about using fear as motivation to move forward?" As he spoke, Yangqing and his heaven and earth avatar were ignited with blazing solar true fire. Both of them were covered in pure gold. It was as if there were countless needle-like rays shooting out from them. At this moment he seemed to have turned into a man made of solar true fire. In the next instant, Yangqing and his heaven and earth avatar, which was made of golden flames, suddenly turned white. It was as if they had turned into a white man made of fire. The white man was surrounded by ferocious and dark black smoke. There was a faint black brilliance flowing in the black smoke. The four symbols yin-yang transformation, the solar destruction transformation, the yang within the yang destruction despair realm. Yangqing, who had turned into a black man made of water after entering the solitary yin despair realm, was as calm as a dead man. It was as if he didn't have the emotions of a normal person. Now that he had entered the yang destruction despair realm, Yangqing, who had turned into a white man made of fire, appeared violent and domineering. His words were like spring thunder as he roared. "Old demon clown, you're nothing more than this." As he roared, 9 rays of black light floated around Yangqing, who had turned into a white man made of fire. Sometimes they would turn into 9 dragon shadows. Sometimes they would turn into 9 blazing suns. The terrifying power shook the void like a natural disaster. The berserk 9 suns annihilation divine power shook the surroundings and set off wild waves. 9 dragon shadows rose up like hidden dragons soaring into the sky. 9 blazing suns descended like suns bombarding the ground. As the white flames and black light exploded, the golden radiance formed by Shen Qifeng's great nirvana finger was directly shattered and turned into nothingness. In Sikongyu's fierce ghost temple, the hands of the huge malicious ghost on top of the temple were also blown off. The malicious ghost wailed miserably, and its entire body was covered in cracks. The huge temple hall was directly blown away by the powerful force, flying backward. The foundation of the temple, together with the bricks of the walls, were all shattered. The entire building was shaking violently, as if it was about to collapse. Sikongyu's face suddenly turned pale. The void return ghost body that he had manifested trembled violently. Black fog spread out from his body. His body, which was closely connected to the fierce ghost temple, was also heavily injured by the 9 suns' destruction. As for the finger that Shen Qifeng used to cast the great nirvana finger, starting from the tip, it kept shattering. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't save it. He could only watch as his entire arm turned into nothingness, starting from his finger to his shoulder. His primordial spirit and the Nirvana pearl were both heavily injured. The two of them looked at Yang Qing, who was gradually escaping from the Yang Destruction Despair realm, with lingering fear in their hearts. Yang Qing had returned to his original appearance. However, he and the heaven and earth Dharma idol above his head were extremely weak. Whether it was the Taiyin solitary slumber or the Nine Suns destruction, they were both Dharma arts that consumed a lot of energy. Moreover, they contained violent Tao annihilation power. While they were extremely powerful, they would also cause Yang Qing harm and burden himself. However, Yang Qing's expression was calm and peaceful at this moment. There was still a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. His current mental state seemed to be unprecedentedly relaxed and at ease. Sixth junior brother, allow me to be frivolous for once. I'll have to trouble you. Yang Qing suddenly sat cross-legged in the void. As the light flickered above his head, the figure of a young man appeared. He looked exactly the same as Yang Qing when he was 14 or 15 years old. It was his Yuanying out of body. At this moment, it was the time when Li Yuanfang re-established the river and Luo Heavenly Gates formation after attaining the primordial spirit realm. It was the time when the Chakra King, the Equality King, and the others were all involved in it. Hearing Yang Qing's words, Li Yuanfang looked over. As if he knew what Yang Qing was thinking, there was a hint of concern in his eyes. Fifth senior brother, you're not in a good state now. The accumulation of your Dharma power is still some distance away from the peak of the late Yuanying realm. Yang Qing smiled. Don't worry, I'm prepared. Previously, he practiced medicine outside all year round and had little time to cultivate. It was not until not long before the war between the two worlds started that he returned to Yujing Mountain to cultivate in seclusion and achieved the late Yuanying realm. After that, although he also cultivated in seclusion in the Xiantian Time Cave for a long time, constantly nourishing and accumulating Dharma power, he was still some distance away from the peak of the late Yuanying realm. Later on, after experiencing Ningguang's illusory dream world, his state of mind and willpower had already undergone a round of cleansing. After waking up from the dream, he continued to study the Tao and comprehend the Great Tao, until he was ordered by Lin Feng to participate in the battle against the king of the underworld. At this moment, although the accumulation of his Dharma power was still insufficient, he could already see the faintly discernible door in the comprehension of the Tao. At this moment, after experiencing Sikong Yu's ghost terror curse, Yang Qing once again surpassed himself and perfected himself. This caused his state of mind and willpower to gradually approach perfection. Yang Qing took out a small porcelain bottle and took a deep breath. There was a cloud of qi in the porcelain bottle that was sucked into his mouth. Li Yuanfang's river and Luo Heavenly Gates array continued to spread and expanded to where Yang Qing and the others were. It directly swept Yang Qing into the array and protected him. Seeing this, Sikong Yu and Shen Qifeng knew that things were not going well. They thought of the scene when Li Yuanfang had proven his essence Soul Tao. Even though Li Yuanfang's river and Luo Heavenly Gates array was extremely powerful, Sikong Yu and Shen Qifeng still gritted their teeth and attacked together, wanting to stop Yang Qing's next move. In the river and Luo Heavenly Gates array, Yang Qing's expression was calm. He opened his palm and revealed a few jade stones. These jade stones were crushed by him, and a massive amount of essence qi was released from them. This was a treasure that Yang Qing had obtained by chance when he was traveling around the world. It contained a large amount of spiritual qi. The few jade stones added together was almost comparable to a cloud forest tree from back then. Previously, Yang Qing's state of mind was insufficient, and the accumulation of his dharmic powers was also insufficient. Both of them slowly cultivated and improved together. At this moment, his state of mind was already sufficient. What he lacked was the accumulation of dharmic powers. It was just like when Zen Master Dade was trying to break through to the third level of the Pure Land realm of the Golden Body realm. After going through many trials and consuming the 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal Pill, the illusory essence soul door in the void started to become clear in front of Yang Qing. At this moment, with these jade stones and the supplement of Xianmen Tianzong's own elixirs, Yangqing's damaged soul and heaven and earth Dharma idol started to recover continuously. The massive amount of spiritual qi accumulated pushed his yuanying to continuously strengthen. When his yuanying was strengthened to the extreme, Yangqing suddenly let out a clear roar. The yuanying turned into a stream of light and fused with the huge heaven and earth Dharma idol. Then they attacked the essence soul door together. Chapter 1247. When Yangqing's yuanying finally grew to its limit, it transformed into his appearance when he was 15 or 16 years old. It turned into a stream of light and rushed into his heaven and earth form. Then, the two of them combined and pushed open the door of the primordial spirit in the void. At this moment, countless scenes flashed through Yangqing's mind like a flashing lantern. When he was young, he learned Taoism in the Cloudy Cavern. He and Fangting were childhood sweethearts. They got to know each other when they were young and made a promise to each other. Then there was a sudden change. The Cloudy Cavern was burned to a white ground. Fangting could not tell if she was alive or dead. His life changed drastically overnight. Later, he was saved by his current teacher Lin Feng. From then on, he lived in Xianmen Tianzong and successfully became a disciple of Lin Feng. From the beginning, he was a yes man and had doubts about himself. Then his mind gradually became stable and his goal became clear. Under the careful guidance of his teacher Lin Feng, he became more mature and confident. But then there was a sudden change. The truth of the Cloudy Cavern catastrophe was revealed in front of him. What shocked him even more was that Fangting appeared in front of him again. But before the two of them could enjoy the joy of reunion, they immediately felt the tragedy of parting again. It was a reunion after a long time, but it was hard to say whether they should be happy or sad and resentful. Finally, when Fangting's figure fell in the poisonous fire, to Yangqing, it was as if the world was completely shattered in front of his eyes. All of these turned into clear scenes that flashed through Yangqing's mind. The scenes were so unforgettable, but they seemed to leave no trace. Such a contradictory feeling, but Yangqing's mind reached a perfect unity. Finally, it turned into a consistent will. He let out a silent but shocking cry. Primordial spirit! Primordial spirit! Primordial spirit! Yangqing's yuanying and the heaven and earth form merged. It passed through the door in the void, and accepted the baptism of the great way of heaven and earth. His Dharma idol of heaven and earth collapsed with a loud rumble, transforming into numerous seed talismans. Each seed was like a tiny ball of primal chaos aura, within which dazzling light could be vaguely seen. Then these air masses gathered together and formed a huge Tai Chi diagram. It was half black and half white. Slowly, the two levels fused and rotated. On top of the Tai Chi diagram, there were two huge talismans, one gold and one silver, alternating between rising and falling like the sun and the moon. A gentle yet proud singing voice rang out calmly in the void. After the calamity, I kowtowed to the Jade Capital. The Milky Way restores time, the yin and yang are stable, the heaven and earth are peaceful, the sun and moon are bright. This clear song spread out from outside the river path heavenly formation, and resounded through the sky, and it entered into the ears of Sikong Yu and Shin Qifeng instead, causing their expressions to become even gloomier. Li Yuanfang, who was sitting in the River Luo Heavenly Gate formation, revealed a smile and said with a hint of joy, "Congratulations, fifth senior martial brother, for reaching the nascent soul realm and attaining immortality." The sun and moon Tai Chi diagram spun in the void, and kept the blood river painting. Then, it turned back into a young man in purple. It was Yangqing. Yangqing looked at the center of the formation, at Li Yuanfang, who seemed to be sitting on top of the Milky Way. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, sixth junior brother, Dao 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 Dao." After he finished speaking, he nodded at Li Yuanfang, and turned to walk out of the River Luo Heavenly Gate formation. Li Yuanfang seemed to know what he was thinking, and immediately opened the formation to let Yangqing out. Yangqing did not face Sikong Yu and Shin Qifeng the moment he came out of the formation. The light in front of him dimmed. Then he saw a huge Tongtian demon ape with bulging muscles. Its violent blood and qi shook the world. It was the Tongtian demon ape that was refined into a beast god puppet. It appeared above Yangqing and clawed at Yangqing's head. This heaven-reaching demonic ape puppet was no longer as powerful as it was when it was alive. There were clear wounds on its body from the sword of the heavens, and its aura was no longer as powerful as it was when it first appeared. However, its power was so great that it seemed as if it could tear through the void with a single hand. It was still not something that cultivators below the Dao integration stage could withstand. Most Void Return cultivators would be severely injured if they were attacked by this Tongtian demon ape puppet. As for Primordial Spirit Embodiment stage cultivators, they would be killed in one blow. When Yangqing retreated into the formation to break through to the Primordial Spirit Embodiment stage, Si Kongyu and Shen Qifeng immediately realized that the situation was not good. Both of them were pragmatists. Without any hesitation, they immediately contacted King Yanluo and ordered the Tongtian demon ape puppet to wait for an opportunity. As soon as Yangqing appeared, it temporarily shook off the Tsangtian Dao Jian and rushed toward Yangqing. Yangqing appeared in the formation and looked up at the terrifying Tongtian demon ape puppet. In a flash, he transformed into the Sun and Moon Tai Chi diagram again. Above the gigantic Tai Chi diagram, two mysterious runes, one gold and one silver, flickered alternately. The golden runes burned and the white flames surged. Thick smoke like black light drifted in the void. The silver runes seemed to solidify and instantly turned pitch black. As the icy blue mist lingered, a pale white light flickered. The two runes alternated and hovered in the void, forming a gigantic ball of air. Dazzling light surged in the ball of air. Yin and Yang complemented each other, and the light became brighter and brighter. It was like the first ray of light when the universe was created. Wherever the light reached, the spiritual qi in the void would separate into Yin and Yang. Then they would fuse again and change continuously, displaying the profoundness of creation. This dazzling light completely shot out from the ball of air and turned into a light screen, blocking the Tongtian demon ape puppet's gigantic claw that seemed to be able to pluck the stars and the moon. The Tongtian demon ape puppet's eyes turned crimson. It increased the strength of its claw and the violent power shook the light screen. But it was unable to shatter it. Not only did Si Kongyu and Shen Qifeng's faces turn grim, but the other people on the battlefield were also shocked when they saw this. Even if this sky-piercing demonic ape puppet is far weaker than a real sky-piercing demonic ape at the unity of the astral soul realm, its strength isn't something a return to void realm cultivator can contend against. But this kid has only just formed his primordial spirit. How can he have such a powerful cultivation base? Thinking of Xiao Yan and the others from before, as well as Li Yuanfang who was at the side, everyone's astonished emotions calmed down again. A person's figure appeared in everyone's mind at the same time. No wonder, they are all that person's direct disciples. But thinking of this, everyone could not help but smile bitterly with a complicated expression on their faces. The Tsangtian Dao Jian sword flashed and stabbed towards the Tongtian demon ape puppet again, forcing it to retreat. As for the Sun and Moon Tai Chi diagram that Yangqing transformed into, it spun in the void and turned into a ray of light, rushing towards Si Kongyu and Shen Qifeng. Si Kongyu and Shen Qifeng were shocked and started to retreat. But the ray of light had already rushed in front of them and turned back into Yangqing. Yangqing looked at Shen Qifeng and a golden flame suddenly lit up on her body. The flame instantly turned white and rose up into a radiance that looked like black smoke. After entering the Yang extinguishing despair realm, Yangqing looked like a white flaming person. Her words were like a series of thunderclaps. It has indeed been a while since we last met after the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, but it seems that I have improved a little more. As she spoke, Yangqing directly reached out to grab Shen Qifeng. Shen Qifeng naturally did not dare to stretch his neck and let himself be killed. The Brahma pearl flashed with a golden radiance and blocked in front of him. However, after the huge Nirvana avatar was grabbed by Yangqing, it immediately burst into flames with crackling sounds. Rolling black light quickly spread from the Nirvana avatar's body, and a disaster-like aura spread out, burning the Nirvana avatar. Shen Qifeng let out a muffled groan, and the Brahma pearl's radiance instantly dimmed as if it was covered in dust. Shen Qifeng pointed at the space between his eyebrows and took a deep breath. Spiritual light flashed above his head, and a huge spiritual formation rune floated in the sky, shrouding him in rays of white light. Reincarnation Sect's secret divine ability, the Great Nine Death Reincarnation Curse. Under the white light, Shen Qifeng's injuries recovered quickly. Even his arm that was broken due to the damage to his primordial spirit was regenerated. The power of the Brahma avatar also increased. Seeing this, the white flaming person Yangqing's expression did not change at all. Her hand was still holding on to the Brahma avatar and she said, 9 suns extinguishing. The 9 rays of black light were like hidden dragons rising to the sky or suns falling to the ground. They vibrated at the same time and directly destroyed the Brahma avatar that had just shown signs of recovery. The violent black light devoured Shen Qifeng and tore his primordial spirit apart. Shen Qifeng shouted angrily, and his primordial spirit shook violently. Apart from the Samsara talisman, the second death substitution rebirth technique began to take effect. This was the reincarnation sect's most powerful death substitution technique, the reincarnation art. It could allow Shen Qifeng to be reborn in the reincarnation sect's celestial realm. But the terrifying black light completely imprisoned Shen Qifeng's primordial spirit, cutting off the connection between his primordial spirit and the resurrection treasure that he had left in the depths of the reincarnation sect. The ferocious power shook the void and completely killed Shen Qifeng. When Sikongyu saw this scene, his heart sank to the bottom. He did not attempt to rescue Shen Qifeng, and he took the opportunity to retreat. But at this moment, Yangqing turned to look at him. Maybe it's the arrogance of someone who has just formed a primordial spirit. I suddenly have an idea. I'm thinking. The white flames and black smoke on his body suddenly dissipated, and he retreated from the yang extinguishing despair. His body flashed with the rays of light that he used to block the heavenly demonic ape puppet. When I no longer worry about personal gains and losses, and am restrained by cowardice and hesitation, and devote myself to a battle. With a flash of light, Yangqing caught up to Sikongyu. He turned into a ray of light and turned around in the void, easily avoiding the ferocious spirit's temple. The rays of black light on the ferocious spirit's temple and the spells that Sikongyu had cast could only chase after the afterimage of the light, shuttling through the void in vain. The cultivators of the same realm in this world. Yangqing suddenly appeared in front of Sikongyu. He stretched out a palm and spread his fingers, covering the top of Sikongyu's head. How many of them are my match? This was the first and only time in Yangqing's life that he spoke such arrogant words. Following this sentence, the light on his palm surged and turned into a terrifying light pillar that seemed to be able to pierce through the void and hit Sikongyu. This technique was called the Silver River Heavy Light. Chapter 1248. Yin and Yang complemented each other. Milky Way Heavy Light. A magnificent pillar of light shone in the void, as if it had broken through the Milky Way and pierced through the universe. Yangqing's proud voice reverberated in the surroundings. Sikongyu's void return ghost body was turned into nothingness by the horrifying Milky Way heavy light. He wanted to activate the evil ghost substitution technique, but he found that his primordial spirit and void return ghost body were locked down by the Milky Way heavy light. He could only wait for his death. His void return Dharma body turned into black smoke and dissipated in the light. Immediately after, his primordial spirit also disintegrated instantly. Netherworld Ancient Destruction Curse. Sikongyu felt the threat of death. His primordial spirit shook violently, and rays of black light shot out from his body, bombarding in all directions. However, the rays of black light that were filled with destructive power all disappeared under the Milky Way heavy light. Sikongyu raised his head in shock. Above the void, at the top of the Milky Way heavy light, there were golden and silver patterns of the sun and moon rotating alternately. That was Yangqing's palm. No matter how much he resisted, it was just a last-ditch struggle. Sikongyu's void return Dharma body was completely destroyed, and his primordial spirit also disintegrated. Yangqing looked at this scene silently. What? The death substitution technique that the king of the underworld set up for you can only be used once in a person's life? No wonder it's so effective. Sikongyu raised his head and looked into Yangqing's eyes with a complicated expression. I didn't expect that I would die in your hands. Haha, speaking of which, your life has undergone an earth-shattering change because of Zhang Lai. However, under my guidance, Zhang Lai has walked on a completely different path. At the end of the day, only by killing Zhang Lai and then killing me can you be considered to have severed the old grudge between you. Yang Qing shook her head. It's meaningless to talk about this now. To me, the king of the underworld seized the Haotian mirror and endangered the situation of the divine land in the war between the two worlds. Thus, I tried my best to stop him. You protected him and blocked my path, so I killed you. It's that simple. Sikongyu wanted to say something else, but his primordial spirit was completely destroyed by the Milky Way heavy light. The Underworld Hall's branch hall master, the Yama kings of the 10 halls, and after the Song Emperor Shen Qifeng, the disobedient King Sikongyu had also fallen. The sudden change in the battle caused Songtian Daojian, Gu Yuankai, Yama King, and Mo Shilua and the others to look over in shock. Shen Qifeng was previously a disciple of the reincarnation sect's previous sect master, Shi Tianfang. After the annihilation battle, he secretly followed the king of the underworld to cultivate. In the past, he was also a rising star whose name shook the entire divine land. His talent even surpassed that of his master, Shi Tianfang. In the future, he would become a giant figure. After the annihilation battle, Shen Qifeng took over the position of the reincarnation sect's celestial path sect master, and went into seclusion with the reincarnation sect, causing the world to gradually forget about him. However, few people knew that the king of the underworld had been secretly observing him all these years, intending to take him in as his 5th disciple. But at this moment, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. No matter how much hope he had, no matter how bright his future was, it was all meaningless. This powerful cultivator of the new generation who had yet to truly unleash his full potential had become the sacrifice for the first battle after another person had proven his primordial spirit Tao. As for Sikongyu, he had been an elder of the 10,000 Ghosts sect many years ago. After the 10,000 Ghosts sect was destroyed, he was the only one among the primordial spirit realm cultivators in the sect who had managed to escape. His ghost Tao cultivation could be said to be top-notch in the world. Even among the Void Return cultivators, he was an extraordinary existence. He became the king of the underworld's trusted aide, fooling Su Anda, Zhang Lai, and the others to sound the first death knell for Su Anda's rebel forces. But today, Sikongyu, who had been free and unfettered for thousands of years, was also buried here, heading towards the end of his path. For Gu Yuankai and Songtian Daojian, they had seen the divine powers of Xiao Yan and the others, and they had just witnessed Li Yuanfang's methods. In their eyes, it was not surprising that Yang Qing had killed Sikongyu and Shen Qifeng after successfully proving her primordial spirit Tao. But the victory came so easily that Sikongyu and Shen Qifeng did not even have the slightest hope of escaping. They could not help but feel surprised. At this moment, an earth-shattering roar came from the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation on the other side. It was just that this roar was filled with despair no matter how one listened to it. That roar came from the Chakra King. At this moment, he was trapped in the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation, and was constantly being attacked by the formation. It was difficult for him to continue. The powerful formation was like a millstone, squeezing the Chakra King in the center of the millstone, and crushing him continuously. It was also like a huge spider web, and the Chakra King was like a flying insect stuck on it. The more he struggled, the more powerless he became. The Equality King, who was also trapped in the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation, was completely silent at this moment. He had manifested his primordial spirit incarnation, and was struggling bitterly to control the Luo River boat that was on the verge of breaking. Li Yuanfang sat in the formation silently, issuing order after order in an orderly manner. Although it was not as fierce as Yang Qing's, it was still exuding an irresistible and imposing aura. With an irreversible momentum, he crushed the Chakra King and Equality King step by step in the River Luo Heavenly Gates formation. At the same time, the huge formation was still expanding outwards, sucking in the Underworld Hall's cultivators and beast god puppets into the formation, attacking and killing them. The omnipresent formation was like a huge whirlpool, sucking in the surrounding enemies. Seeing this terrifying array formation, even Gu Peng and the other ancient race cultivators felt their hearts tremble. Some people chose to enter the array formation and cooperate with it to kill enemies faster. Some people subconsciously retreated. Even their allies and companions didn't want to approach this array formation that was like an abyss of death. Songtian Daojian looked at this scene and was slightly absent-minded. Be it Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao and the others, or the two young people in front of me now, they are far superior to their peers. Although Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and the others had shown brilliantly in this war between the two worlds, starting to move from the edge to the center on the highest stage of the Tianyuan Great World. Although Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang and the others had achieved the primordial spirit and ascended the Great Tao, they had also begun to transform their deep potential into strength, attracting the attention of the world. But at this moment, Songtian Daojian had a strong feeling that until now, Xianmen Tianzong was still in a state of rapid growth. Xiao Yan and the others were still in a state of hidden dragons rising to the sky. As long as they did not fall midway, the height of their future was unimaginable. Just thinking about it was enough to make people feel dazzled. Other than the fact that it was limitless, there was no other way to describe it. Gu Yuankai also had a complicated expression. Previously, when the battle achievements of Zhu Yi, Wang Lin and the others spread, and what he witnessed at this moment with his own eyes, it touched him more than Songtian Daojian. The rumors are true. The higher the realm of the Xianmen Tianzong cultivators, the more their strength surpasses other cultivators of the same realm. At this moment, Gu Yuankai suddenly had a thought. In the whole world, only Taishu Temple can compete with them. But if this continues to develop, the only opponent of Xianmen Tianzong will be themselves. Right now, I can already see the first signs. Thinking about the overall situation of the war between the two worlds and the crisis of Taishu Temple in the Xian Sea, this ancient clan elder who had always been inclined to Taishu Temple felt even more complicated at this moment. Yang Qing let out a long roar in the void and unleashed her primordial spirit incarnation, transforming into the appearance of the Sun and Moon Tai Chi diagram. Li Yuanfang, who was in the River Luo Heavenly Gate formation, also did the same and manifested the primordial spirit incarnation of the Nine Palace Tai Chi diagram. The two of them began to work together and walked toward the battlefield where the mighty figures like Songtian Daojian and Gu Yuankai were. King Yama, the king of the underworld, and Mo Shuluo all felt a slight chill in their hearts. While facing Gu Yuankai, the South Pole treasure gourd, and the Songtian Daojian, even the armored black dragon puppet, and the heaven-reaching demonic ape puppet, Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang's approach made these great cultivators of the Dao integration realm feel immense pressure. At this moment, the battle began to tilt in favor of the allied forces of Xianmen Tianzong and the ancient imperial family. The group of powerful cultivators continued to close in on the black three-tiered altar in the void. King Yama, Mo Shuluo, and the others were forced to retreat step by step. Their space of activity was constantly being compressed, and their line of defense was on the verge of collapse. On the dark altar, the youthful king of the underworld was very happy. He turned his head and looked down at the altar. He looked at King Yama and the others who had fallen into a bitter battle. He looked at Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Yuankai, and the others who were advancing step by step. His expression did not change, but his eyes had completely turned black at this moment. However, after a short while, the void on the other side suddenly began to shake violently. A boundless blood cloud appeared, directly occupying half of the void. Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and Gu Yuankai frowned at the same time. Taoist Blood River. The terrifying blood cloud tumbled and cracked. From the cloud, surging rivers of blood flowed out. Countless rivers of blood gathered together, turning into a large sea of blood that filled the surroundings. On the sea of blood stood an old man in white with a bloody glint in his eyes. It was Taoist Blood River. Although Gu Jun could resist Taoist Blood River's attack against Yan Nanlai, if Taoist Blood River wanted to retreat, Gu Jun could not do much. He could only chase after him. White lotuses followed closely behind the sea of blood, covering the void. Gu Jun's figure also appeared. Although Taoist Blood River, who had been refined into an evil soul, could not activate the Dharma-ending calamity, his appearance here against Yang Qing, Gu Yuankai, and the others would undoubtedly be a massacre. After returning to the vicinity of the King of the Underworld, Taoist Blood River's magic power increased. Even with Gu Jun's longevity lotus, it suddenly became incomparably strenuous to fight against him. he was gradually losing. Gu Jun had no intention of fighting Taoist Blood River head-on. White lotuses bloomed, protecting Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Yuankai, Songtian Daojian, the South Pole treasure gourd, and the other ancient race cultivators. Slowly he retreated. Taoist Blood River did not chase after him. He stood in front of the black altar. The monstrous sea of blood protected the black altar in the center. Whether it was Gu Jun and the others or Yama King, Emo Shilua, and the others who had survived the disaster, they were all bewildered. With Taoist Blood River's protection, no one could approach the black altar. On the other side, Yin Nanlai, who was using the blood soul calming spell, was also undisturbed. What is the king of the underworld planning? For a moment, everyone was puzzled. Chapter 1249. Yin Nanlai wanted to use the special effects of the blood soul calming curse to kill his own ancestor, Yin Xinghe, who had turned into an evil soul and was controlled by the king of the underworld as his puppet. In a time when the war between the two worlds had reached its climax, where the swordsmen of the human race and the demonic race were locked in a fierce battle, Yin Nanlai's method could be considered the least costly and most likely to succeed in ruining the emperor of the underworld's plans. The king of the underworld was well aware of his intentions and had been secretly guarding against this. Previously, Yuming Taoist brought the Book of Life and Death, and Blood River Taoist's evil soul had gone out to search for Yin Nanlai and launch a surprise attack, all to destroy Yin Nanlai's blood soul calming curse ritual. But Zhou Diliangpan brought the first imperial palace, and Gu Jun brought the longevity lotus throne to protect Yin Nanlai and buy time. On the other hand, the king of the underworld's netherworld altar was gradually broken through by Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Yuankai, and the rest. To the king of the underworld, whether it was Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Yuankai, Songtian Daojian, or the South Pole treasure gourd, none of them posed a threat to him. But if the ritual was interrupted because of this, it would ruin his plans, and he would not have such a good opportunity in the future. So the king of the underworld finally called Blood River Taoist back to protect him. Blood River Taoist returned, and immediately the netherworld altar was impregnable, and no one could take a step past it. If not for Gu Jun bringing the longevity lotus throne, Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Yuankai, and the rest would all have perished under the sea of blood. But in this way, Yin Nanlai's side was empty. The wisdom of the king of the underworld's action was questionable. He has a way to deal with Taishu Temple's Yin Monastery head. Our attack on the altar and Yin Monastery head killing Yin Xinghe with the blood soul calming curse. The latter is more of a threat. Gu Yuankai stood beside Gu Jun and said in a deep voice, even if he was forced, he should not have made such a foolish move. It looks like he has a card up his sleeve. But if he already had a way to deal with it, and was not afraid of the Yin Monastery Master's blood soul tranquility spell, then why did he have to order Taoist Yuming and Taoist Blood River to kill the Yin Monastery Master so many times? Gu Yuankai's eyes were filled with doubt. If there is a way to nullify the blood soul calming curse, then we just have to ignore it. With Yin Guan Lord's cultivation, if he wants to use the blood soul calming curse to kill Yin Xinghe, no matter what the outcome is, he will have to sacrifice all his life essence. Gu Jun stared at the darkness altar that was surrounded by the blood sea and didn't say a word. On the other side, Gu Peng asked, could it be a bluff to mislead us? After saying that, Gu Peng shook his head first. It was true that Yin Nanlai must have felt the same way as everyone else. He was filled with doubts about the king of the underworld's move. If the king of the underworld really had a way to nullify the blood soul calming curse on Yin Xinghe, then the Taishu Temple's current monastery head Yin Nanlai would have lost his life in vain. It would be equivalent to suicide. In the history of Taishu Temple, and even in the history of the Divine Land's human cultivation world, it could be said that he had died an extremely sullen death. Yin Nanlai was not afraid of death, but to have a meaningless death was something that he could not accept. But if Yin Nanlai hesitated because of the king of the underworld's unclear actions, and watched the king of the underworld snatch the Haotian mirror, then he would become a sad joke. Giving up on the blood soul calming curse and coming to the altar, with his current injuries and strength, even if he joined forces with Gu Jun, they would not be able to break through Taoist Blood River's defense. If the other party was determined to defend, even if Yan Nanlai was at his peak and joined forces with Gu Jun's longevity Lotus Throne, they would not be able to break through in a short period of time. Gu Yuankai muttered, "The Book of Life and Death is in the hands of Taoist Yu Ming. At this moment, he is fighting with the great Zhou dynasty's Liang Pan and the Grand Imperial Palace. Let's turn around and attack Taoist Yu Ming. Even if we can't kill him completely, as long as we can obtain a few pages of the Book of Life and Death and refine them into the Longevity Lotus Throne, allowing the Longevity Lotus Throne to take the final step and completely achieve good fortune. Then we can join forces with the Yen Monastery head and the Grand Imperial Palace to attack Taoist Blood River. Maybe we can break through the current crisis. Although it will take some time, it is still a way." Gu Peng murmured, "Ninth uncle, you are right, but no one can predict how long it will take for the king of the underworld to carry out the ritual to seize the Haotian mirror. Even if he is unable to seize the mirror successfully, as long as the Haotian mirror in the mysterious sea is shaken, Taishu Temple's defense will be broken through by the dragon race in the mysterious sea, and the situation will be completely out of control." As they were speaking, Gu Jun suddenly interrupted them and said, "It's too late." Gu Yuankai and Gu Peng both raised their eyes and looked into the void far away. They saw a crack in the space above the altar and the blood sea, and a middle-aged black-clothed Taoist came out from it. He held an ancient scroll in his hand that flashed with a mysterious and vast radiance. It was Taoist Yu Ming and the Book of Life and Death. The two fell into the blood sea together. The blood sea did not cause any harm or obstruction to Taoist Yu Ming and the Book of Life and Death, allowing them to fall on top of the Netherworld altar. Gu Jun said calmly. When he called back Blood River Taoist, he also called back Taoist Yu Ming and the Book of Life and Death, not giving us a chance to break them one by one. After giving up the plan to kill the Lord of Yen Abbey, he will definitely gather the forces at hand, and will not split them up again. Gu Yuankai, Gu Peng, and the others nodded. Then, as the void trembled, the huge imperial palace also appeared, shining with purple and gold light. Its majestic momentum shocked the heavens. Not only was Gu Jun surprised, but Blood River Taoist's eyes also flashed as he looked at the imperial palace. On top of the Netherworld altar, Taoist Yu Ming also looked at the imperial palace and gently flipped the Book of Life and Death in his hand. As the light flashed, the gray world of the dead appeared and guarded the Netherworld altar together with the Blood Sea. He had just experienced the power of the number one treasure of Human Emperor, which had returned to its peak. He was at a disadvantage when he activated the Book of Life and Death, and felt that it was not easy to resist. But whether it was Gu Jun in the Sea of White Lotuses or Emperor Zhou Liangpan in the Imperial Palace, they were not relaxed at this moment. Although they had joined forces, Blood River Taoist and Taoist Yu Ming, as well as the power of the Book of Life and Death, had also gathered together. It would be difficult to break through the defense line of the King of the Underworld in a short period of time. Gu Yuankai said in a low voice, "Will it still depend on the Lord of Yen Abbey?" At this moment, they along with Emperor Zhou and Liang Pan, received Yan Nanlai's voice transmission using his transcendence energy. "Thank you, fellow Taoists, for your hard work earlier. Next, I will continue with the ritual. If I succeed and ruin the Underworld Emperor's plans, he will most likely be enraged. Fellow Taoists, please be careful. If I fail, the rest will depend on my friends. This matter concerns the war between the two worlds. I hope that my friends will work together." Emperor Zhou Liangpan said. "The King of the Underworld's methods have suddenly changed. I'm afraid you, Lord of Yen Abbey, won't succeed." Silently, Yan Nanlai said, "If the King of the Underworld really has a way to dissolve my ritual, he wouldn't have needed to send people to kill me. He could have just waited for me to step onto the path of death. There must be a reason for the sudden changes in his methods and the indecisiveness in his actions. Even if I can't destroy his ritual, I'll make him pay a huge price, which will adversely affect his plans. In this way, even if I die, I'll be able to fight for a greater chance of victory for all of you." The current temple master of Taishu Temple said calmly, "I was injured by Yudu. Even if I rush over to attack the enemy's defense line with all of you, I will be of limited use and won't be of much help in the overall situation. Most importantly, time is of the essence. We can wait, but our masters in the Xianhai Sea might not. It's not good for me to take the risk, but since I have no choice, I don't lack the courage to take the risk. Far away in the void, on the vast land of the divine prefecture, Yin Nanlai's hands continuously formed seals. The huge rune in the void above his head had already turned completely dark red. Rays of golden light flowed on top of it, as if they were electric currents. Yen Xinghe took a deep breath and shouted in a low voice, "Go!" As he shouted, a bloodline suddenly shot out from the dark red rune. It went deep into the void, and that bloodline was incomparably ethereal. It passed through the layers of void, and arrived at the location of the king of the underworld's netherworld sacrificial altar. The gray world formed by the power of the life and death book, and the blood sea controlled by Taoist blood river stretched across the horizon. Liangpan, Grand Imperial Palace, Gujun, and the Longevity Lotus Throne couldn't break through easily. However, these majestic forces couldn't stop the ethereal dark red line. Both parties seemed to be in two different worlds, and they couldn't touch each other. Taoist Blood River and Taoist Yuming could only watch as the bloodline landed on the netherworld sacrificial altar. On the top of the sacrificial altar, beside the king of the underworld, Yen Xinghe, who had turned into an evil soul, changed his hand seals. Streams of magic power, consciousness, and thoughts were transmitted into the Xianhai Sea through the long banner in the king of the underworld's hand. His expression was indifferent. Only when the bloodline appeared and landed on his forehead did Yen Xinghe's numb gaze suddenly change, revealing a different emotion. On the other end of the bloodline, the dark red rune descended from the sky and entered Yin Nanlai's body. That bloodline connected him to his ancestor. In the past, it was his pride and his belief. Yen Xinghe's greatest influence on him wasn't because of his bloodline, but because of his ideology. But now he was going to destroy him with his own hands. He was going to send this influential figure in the history of Taishu Temple into the cycle of reincarnation. At this moment, even with Yen Nanlai's usual calm state of mind, he couldn't help but feel complicated and sorrowful. Yen Xinghe raised his eyes and looked into the void. His gaze became calm again, and no emotions could be seen. It was as if he was looking at his descendants, his inheritors, through layers of void. He calmly nodded his head. Yen Nanlai closed his eyes and suddenly clasped his hands together in a hand seal. Numerous cracks instantly appeared on his primordial spirit. From these cracks, a large amount of golden essence of the great Tao sprayed out like fresh blood. As this golden brilliance sprayed out in the void, it gradually turned into dark red blood, covering the entire world. In the next moment, the dark red blood began to burn, and the red line that connected Yen Nanlai and Yen Xinghe trembled violently. Dark red light flowed out of Yen Nanlai's body, following the bloodline and flowing towards Yen Xinghe. Yen Xinghe's body trembled violently when he felt the dark red light flowing from the bloodline. Chapter 1250. The Blood Soul Tranquility Curse. The word tranquility sounded like it came from freedom, but the word blood soul in front spoke of the bloodlust and ferocity of the curse. This great blood soul curse was an improved version of the immemorial demonic Tao technique. It was a curse that rose up in the ancient era. After a short period of amazement, it gradually disappeared in the long river of history. Now, after so many years, it had finally reappeared in the world. And this time, the caster was the temple master of the number one holy land in the divine land. And the target of his curse was his own ancestor, who was also the temple master of this holy land in the ancient era. The dark red light flowed from Yen Nanlai's body to Yen Xinghe's body, causing Yen Xinghe's body to violently tremble. The red light did not cause any harm to Yen Xinghe, but it seemed to have triggered a shocking change within his body. A kind of spontaneous damage was brewing within Yen Xinghe's body, gradually taking shape, and was about to burst out. At this moment, the body formed by his primordial spirit suddenly shone with light, and the light became brighter and brighter. Around the netherworld altar, Taoist Blood River seemed to be unconcerned, his face expressionless and indifferent. As for King Yama, Emoshiolua, and the others, their gazes were filled with worry as they looked above the altar. Taoist Yuming, who was holding the Book of Life and Death, turned to look at Yen Xinghe, whose eyes were filled with worry. When Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Jun Liangpan, and the others saw this, they were at their most nervous state. Although the blood-soul tranquility curse had long been sealed in history, and today was the first time it had reappeared since the ancient era, most of the people present knew about the records of this technique. At this moment, the blood-soul tranquility curse had already begun to take effect. When the light on Yan Xinghe's body reached its peak, his body would shatter like Yan Nanlai. Even if he did not die on the spot, he would definitely be heavily injured, and it would be difficult to move the Haotian mirror in the Xianxi. Gu Jun activated the Longevity Lotus Throne, and Liang Pan activated the Grand Imperial Palace. Both of them were waiting for an opportunity to attack, and if they retreated, they would immediately escape. Now that the ritual of the King of the Underworld had completely failed, the King of the Underworld was enraged and humiliated. Together with Taoist Blood River and the Book of Life and Death, they were undoubtedly a huge threat to the people of the Divine Land. Gu Jun Liangpan and the others were secretly on guard against the King of the Underworld's enraged counterattack. However, the doubts in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. That was because, on the Netherworld altar, the King of the Underworld's expression did not change in the slightest when his plan was about to fail. He remained calm. He held onto the long banner and opened up the Black Sea domain, helping Yan Xinghe to send his spiritual will into the Black Sea. The King of the Underworld looked at Yan Xinghe, whose body was gradually glowing with light. His gaze moved, following the line of blood between Yan Xinghe's eyebrows, all the way to the void. He looked past the layers of void and saw Yan Nanlai, who was gradually disintegrating and turning into a bloody mist. Fearless in the face of death, resolute and resolute. Not bad, not bad. You have some redeeming qualities. The young-looking King of the Underworld nodded his head like an old man. I commend your courage, but I also marvel at your stupidity. You are the same as Yan Xinghe. Both of you like to take things for granted. Can this also be considered a bloodline inheritance? As he spoke, the King of the Underworld's feet flashed and a black vortex appeared. His entire body from his knees down was submerged in the black vortex, as though he was immersed in it. However, you still caused some trouble for me, forcing me to make a choice. Therefore, I still have to commend you. To be able to become the temple master of the Taishu Temple, you are indeed extraordinary. The King of the Underworld said indifferently. Then his body rose from the black vortex, and both his legs below his knees left the black vortex. The King of the Underworld held the long banner in one hand and pointed at Yan Xinghe's evil soul with the other. Yan Xinghe's evil soul slowly rose from the Netherworld sacrificial altar, and the black vortex appeared beneath his feet. Yan Xinghe's evil soul slowly descended, and both his legs entered the black vortex. Then his body continued to sink, until his entire body was completely submerged in the black vortex. The black vortex, which was originally spinning rapidly, suddenly stopped, and then started spinning in the opposite direction. The bloodline in the void was still passing through the black vortex and connecting with Yan Xinghe's forehead. However, the glow on the surface of Yan Xinghe's body had dimmed and disappeared. The turbulence that was brewing in his body had also calmed down. Within the black vortex, Yan Xinghe's evil soul was still changing its hand seals. Streams of divine sense were sent out, and they were sent into the mysterious sea through the long banner in the King of the Underworld's hand. Witnessing this scene, Gu Jun and Liang Pan's heart sank. Although they were unable to see through the black vortex, the King of the Underworld's expression was still calm. He was confident and did not seem to be bluffing. However, Yan Xinghe's evil soul was still able to use the ritual. This also confirmed their suspicions. The King of the Underworld really had a way to deal with the blood-soul calming curse. Looking at the black vortex, Gu Jun, who had understood what had happened in the mysterious sea from Lin Feng, understood. That is the ritual that the King of the Underworld uses to recover his cultivation. Now, in order to stop the blood-soul calming curse from killing Yan Xinghe's evil soul, he has transferred it to Yan Xinghe. Although the King of the Underworld wanted to recover his cultivation as soon as possible, with the current situation, the Haotian mirror was undoubtedly more important. If he could obtain the Haotian mirror, then to the King of the Underworld, other than his own life, any price he paid would only be a gain. On the other end of the blood thread, Yin Nanlai's primordial spirit had already dissipated. It gradually disintegrated and turned into a mist of light. To use the blood soul calming curse, he had to sacrifice his own blood essence. He could not use any tricks to save his life. Furthermore, the person he wanted to kill was Yen Xinghe, whose cultivation was higher than his. From the moment the ritual was activated, he was already destined to die. Yen Xinghe's remaining consciousness passed through the void through the blood soul calming curse. Looking at Yen Xinghe's evil soul that was gradually enveloping the black vortex, he felt neither joy nor sorrow. In the end, the king of the underworld was still more skilled. Yin Nanlai had failed on the verge of success. He could only watch as the king of the underworld controlled Yen Xinghe's evil soul to further shake the Haotian mirror in the Xianxi. At this moment, Yin Nanlai seemed to be able to see the king of the underworld's long banner in the Xianxi domain. The flickering golden Xianxi's seawater rippled more violently. As for Yin Nanlai's great void seal, although it was on the verge of shattering, it still transmitted some information. However, it was not good news. Through the great void seal, Yin Nanlai could feel that the Haotian mirror was becoming more and more unstable. It was slowly slipping out of control. As for the Haotian mirror, Dao Lord Taiwan and the others, they were under more and more pressure from the Xianxi and the Dragon Clan experts. The defensive line, which was already unable to bear the pressure and was constantly collapsing, was now showing signs of completely collapsing. It was as though it would be broken in the next moment. Waves after waves of dragon roars resounded in the Xianxi. On the netherworld altar, the king of the underworld revealed a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. This scene gradually froze, becoming the last scene in Yin Nanlai's mind. The next moment, his primordial spirit completely collapsed. It did not leave behind any words, nor did it leave behind any aura. Just like that, it gradually dissipated between heaven and earth. It was as though there was only a long, silent sigh echoing in the void. In this battle, the current temple master of the Taishu Temple, Yin Nanlai, had fallen. Around the netherworld altar, other than Taoist Blood River, who was still expressionless, Mo Xiaolua and the others all revealed smiles. There were even people who laughed out loud. Even Taoist Yu Ming, who was holding the Book of Life and Death beside the king of the underworld, also revealed a smile on his pale face. On the other hand, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Jun, Gu Yuankai, Liang Pan, and the rest all had solemn expressions. Yin Nanlai's sacrifice couldn't be said to be meaningless, but at least it wasn't of much help to the current situation. Even though the king of the underworld had temporarily given up on the ritual to recover his cultivation, it didn't affect him from continuing with his plan, which was to seize the Haotian mirror through Yen Xinghe's evil soul. And the defensive line formed by Taoist Blood River, Taoist Yu Ming, and the Book of Life and Death was still hard to break. Through the realm passage opened by the long banner, the waves in the Xianxi became more and more turbulent. Everyone could feel that the dragon race was controlling the Xianxi to attack more and more fiercely, and the situation of the Taishu Temple and the Haotian mirror was getting worse and worse. They probably wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. And at this moment, in the faraway White Cloud Mountain, Dao Master Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, Lin Daohan, and the rest, who were fighting with the strong practitioners of the Yudu race in the void, felt their hearts tremble. Dao Master Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, Dao Master Qing Ning, and Fu Yongkong all sighed softly, while sorrow flashed past Lin Daohan's calm eyes. In the middle of White Cloud Mountain, a broken rune suddenly appeared. It was the Great Void inscription. The inscription returning to White Cloud Mountain could only mean one thing. Yin Nanlai had fallen. But Dao Master Xian Yi could still feel that the Haotian mirror in the Xianxi was becoming more and more unstable. It was still being affected by the king of the underworld and Yen Xinghe's evil soul. He knew that even though Yin Nanlai had fallen, he still hadn't been able to destroy the king of the underworld's plan. Everything was developing towards the worst possible outcome. In the Xianxi, the line of defense between Dao Master Tai and the rest and the Haotian mirror was about to completely collapse. At this moment, Taishu Temple couldn't spare any more people to stop the king of the underworld. Not to mention stopping the king of the underworld. Even they themselves were in a dangerous situation. The Supreme Void Yin-Yang formation was fighting against Jing Yin Yudu and another strong practitioner of Yudu, who was at the beginning of the tribulation. The formation was already on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, Dao Master Xian Yi was facing Qinghuan Yudu and was already heavily injured. He could only barely hold on, and danger surrounded him. However, the expressions of Qinghuan Yudu, Jingyan Yudu, and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu suddenly changed slightly. Zhanming Ningfeng and Wanlong are in danger. Other than the master of Xianmen, Xianmen Tianzong has many experts. Don't worry about Taishu Temple for now. Go and save Zhanming Ningfeng and Wanlong first, and deal with the people of Xianmen Tianzong. Fantasy Sun Yuda's voice suddenly rang out. In the current situation, Xianmen Tianzong is our greatest enemy. After dealing with them, we'll go back and deal with the remnants of Taishu Temple. With their current situation, even if they rebuild the Nine Heavens Imperial Court, it'll still be easy to break through. The group of Yudu demons acknowledged in unison, and under the lead of Qinghuan Yudu and Jingyan Yudu, they gradually escaped into the distance. They had the absolute advantage, so if they wanted to retreat, Dao Master Xian Yi and the rest couldn't do anything. Kuang Heng and the rest were guarding the Supreme Void Yin Yang Great Formation, so they couldn't leave White Cloud Mountain. If Dao Master Xian Yi and Taishu Temple chased after them alone, it would be the same as sending them to their deaths. Even though the strong practitioners of Yudu were moving towards Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and Zhanming Yudu, they were also constantly staring at White Cloud Mountain. If Dao Master Xian Yi intended to rush to the battlefield where the king of the underworld was, he would immediately be intercepted by the great demons of Yudu the moment he left White Cloud Mountain. On the battlefield of White Cloud Mountain, only Fantasy Sun Yudu and Lin Feng were still in a stalemate. Fantasy Sun Yudu's body was also gradually shifting away from White Cloud Mountain, but that overflowing power was still tightly locking onto Lin Feng. Destructive attacks continued to attack Lin Feng. Lin Feng, who was shrouded by jade-colored auspicious clouds around Jade Capital Mountain, had the light in his eyes grow brighter and colder. Chapter 1251. The great demons of Yudu, including Sun Mirage Yudu, started to move away from White Cloud Mountain, towards the battlefield where Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and Zhanming Yudu were. Among them, some of them escaped quickly to help Zhanming Yudu and the others. Some of them retreated slowly, their attention on the people of Taishu Temple. Once they leave the help of White Cloud Mountain and the Supreme Void Yin Yang Great Formation, the people of the Great Void Temple who were already unable to bear the burden would immediately be killed by the great demons of Yudu who had the advantage. Sun Mirage Yudu did the same thing. As they moved away from White Cloud Mountain, they were stuck in the direction where Lin Feng was heading towards Shi Tianhao. The threat that Dao Venerable Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, and Lin Daohan faced was gone, but they couldn't relax at all. The collapse of the main force of Taishu Temple and the defense line of Haotian Mirror in the mysterious sea was a devastating blow to both Taishu Temple and the war between the two worlds. The crisis of the people left behind was only temporarily alleviated. The root of the problem hadn't been solved yet. The Yudu race, who had the upper hand, could return to White Cloud Mountain at any time to launch another attack after dealing with Shi Tianhao and the White Tiger Great Sage. The temporary disappearance of the threat only gave everyone a chance to linger on. What made Dao Venerable Xian Yi and the rest even more helpless was that if they left White Cloud Mountain, they might be attacked by Yudu race at any time, and the situation here would collapse in an instant. The war between the two worlds had progressed to this point, and to the cultivation world of the human race in the Divine Land, the situation was extremely dangerous. Lin Feng looked coldly at Sun Mirage Yudu. The people of Taishu Temple still didn't know that the overall situation was actually worse than what they could see. Others still didn't know, but Lin Feng was very clear that the effect of heaven severing sealed boundary was gradually coming to an end. The Great Sage and the Great Sage Zhu Yan, who were now trapped in the Spirit Abyss Mountain, would soon regain their freedom. In such a delicate situation, if either of the two great demons of the ape race were to come out of the mountains and step onto the Divine Land, it would immediately cause a huge disaster. Before this, when Sword Venerable Tiangang rushed back to Shushan to deal with the changes caused by Sword Venerable Tsangming, Shenlong King, who was in the southern wasteland realm passage, seemed to have sensed something and began to move, forcing his way into the Divine Land. Xiao Yan and the Big Dipper swordsman had dealt with the changes in Shushan, but at the same time, Zhu Yi was also facing great pressure. Just like Lord Xianyi and the others, Lin Feng had also received the news of Yan Nanlai's failure from Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Jun, and the others. He stared at Mirage Sun Yudu that was still glaring at him, and his eyes gradually narrowed into slits. He turned his head to look at the primordial golden lamp. In the huge golden disk formed by the power of the primordial golden lamp outside Jade Capital Mountain, the black liquid that had condensed after absorbing the Yudu Xianhua had already completely disappeared. Under Mirage Sun Yudu's timely response, the absorption effect of the primordial golden lamp on the Yudu Xianhua seemed to have become completely ineffective. However, under the shroud of the auspicious clouds, numerous strange black markings appeared on the surface of the primordial golden lamp above Jade Capital Mountain. These black markings came together to form a strange rune that was imprinted in the center of the primordial golden lamp. The black markings continued to extend and expand continuously, and the rune gradually became complete. It contained a profound power, and under the control of Lin Feng's will, it gradually formed a unique ritual. There was also a beam of white light that shot out from the primordial golden lamp into the void. In the void far away, there seemed to be an extremely strong existence that was faintly trembling. Looking through the white light, one could see a huge black and white pillar of qi that seemed to be close yet far away in the dark void. It was faintly discernible, floating and sinking. The white light on the primordial golden lamp was connected to that black and white pillar of qi. Master of Xian sect, it's a good idea for you to borrow my power, but aren't you underestimating me too much? Mirage Sun Yuda's voice rang out outside Jade Capital Mountain. Even though he couldn't see Lin Feng's actions through the jade-colored auspicious clouds, it didn't stop him from feeling that the primordial golden lamp was intentionally absorbing his power and directing it elsewhere. Mirage Sun Yudu calmly swept a glance at the round disk that was like a golden full moon in the void. At that moment, the round disk could no longer absorb his Yudu Xianhua. A beam of black profound light flashed by and instantly shattered the golden round disk. The main body of the primordial golden lamp on Jade Capital Mountain also trembled slightly. Lin Feng saw this, but he wasn't moved. He continued to fight with Mirage Sun Yudu while suddenly transmitting his voice to the people of Taishu Temple, who were in an awkward situation. Back then, you wanted to send my disciple into the mysterious sea. Where is the formation diagram now? Is it left on White Cloud Mountain, or has it been brought away by Taoist Venerable and the rest? Lin Feng's question stunned Dao Venerable Xian Yi and the rest. Their expressions couldn't help becoming slightly complicated. Back then, they had failed to scheme against Lin Feng, and were instead schemed against by Lin Feng. That was the start of the war between the two worlds. From the start of the war, Taishu Temple had always been under heavy pressure. However, now wasn't the time to be embarrassed. Even though he didn't know Lin Feng's intentions, Dao Venerable Xianyi still answered decisively, "It's here with me." Lin Feng continued to ask, "Do you still have the talismans that are made from the power of the Haotian mirror, and the seawater of the mysterious sea that are used to direct the formation?" Dao Venerable Xianyi's gaze froze. "Yes, bring them along with the formation diagram," Lin Feng said calmly. Dao Venerable Xianyi said solemnly, "Even though the formation diagram is still here, the materials used to set up the ancient formation aren't complete anymore." Lin Feng said lightly, "It doesn't matter. The formation diagram and talismans are enough." Dao Venerable Xianyi and the rest fell silent. They understood what Lin Feng meant. Lin Feng wanted to use his own power to form a formation. Such a formation cultivation was unparalleled in the world. However, Lin Feng didn't care much about it. As he spoke, his hands didn't stay idle. He continued to draw talismans and formation patterns in the void. The talismans and formation patterns were complicated and profound. These formation patterns overlapped and gradually formed a pagoda-like existence. The top of the pagoda-like existence flickered, and a misty white cloud gradually flowed out from it. Within the illusory white cloud, there seemed to be countless scenes surging out, looking both real and illusory. If it was an ordinary person, as long as they came into contact with the white cloud, they would be trapped in a mirage, unable to extricate themselves. It was the magical power that originated from one of the 7 seas of Tianyuan, the Ying Sea. However, the power was extremely gentle, like a thin stream of water that flowed for a long time. Lin Feng's expression was solemn. The situation of the 7 seas of Tianyuan was different. Unlike the Xian Sea, which could set up a guiding ritual, and the Nether Sea, which could open a crack to descend into the universe, the power of the Ying Sea was limited to the Ying Sea itself. Even though Lin Feng had the 2 fairy mountains of Yingzhou and Penglai, he couldn't change the current situation. Not to mention the 2 immortal mountains. Even if the 3 mountains of Ying Ocean were to fall into the hands of one person, allowing that person to completely control Ying Ocean, he would be able to freely control Ying Ocean's boundless power to kill those who entered Ying Ocean. However, it would be difficult for him to guide Ying Ocean's power to the Great Thousand World. It was already Lin Feng's limit to guide some of the aura of the Ying Sea out. Although the aura could communicate with the Ying Sea, it was too gentle, and could not be used to fight with others. Even replenishing the power of the Ying Sea was just a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. However, at this moment, Lin Feng's hand seals kept changing. Then he gently pointed at the white clouds, and they surged toward the huge black and white gas pillar in the void. Lin Feng nodded slightly. With a thought, 2 starry sea gates appeared. They were the starry sea gates that he had obtained from the White Tiger Great Sage and the Great Sage, which had been refined by Lin Feng for many years. Although Lin Feng had not completely refined and controlled the starry sea gates of the Enchantress and the Golden Rock Great Sage, these 2 gates were enough. The 2 starry sea gates opened at the same time. Dazzling starlight shone inside and then gushed out, turning into specks of light. Under the guidance of Lin Feng's divine sense and Dharma power, they escaped into the void in the distance, turning into faint starlight and falling on the black and white gas pillar. On the other side, everyone in the Taishu temple had a myriad of thoughts in their hearts. They couldn't figure out what Lin Feng was trying to do. However, at this critical moment, the situation didn't allow them to hesitate too much. They could only choose to trust Lin Feng and hand the formation diagram and talisman over to Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't explain much and took the formation diagram of the primitive ancient formation. Light shone continuously in his eyes, and the formation diagram turned into a small spot of light that flew into one of Lin Feng's eyes. Large amounts of complicated formation markings and formation theories were being calculated continuously in Lin Feng's consciousness. Fighting with Mirage Sun Yudu and having to deduce such a complicated formation at the same time, even Lin Feng found it a little strenuous. Mirage Sun Yudu, who was fighting with him, immediately sensed the change. Even though he didn't know what Lin Feng was doing, he immediately strengthened his attacks, causing Lin Feng, who was already at a disadvantage, to be in an even more disadvantageous position. However, Lin Feng's expression was still as calm as before, and he only seized the time to deduce. Light suddenly flashed in his eyes, and a beam of light flew out. It spread out in the sky above Jade Capital Mountain, and transformed into an incomparably huge formation. In the folded void, densely packed light spots that were like stars appeared. From afar, they looked as fine as corn, but each light spot was actually a huge ball of light that was the size of an acre. These balls of light guided everything in the surroundings, and even the plants on Jade Capital Mountain were faintly affected. Lin Feng directly struck the talisman that was made from the power of the Haotian mirror fused with the seawater of the Xianhai into the formation, and the formation started to tremble violently. It wasn't as violent as before, turning the formation into nothingness along with the heaven and earth in all directions. Now the operation of this primitive ancient formation was even more stable, and it suddenly opened up a world passage. On the other side of the passage, black seawater that was flashing with golden light churned continuously. It was the Xianhai. Even though the Haotian mirror is shaken, most of the power of the Xianhai that is contending against it is also gathered there. And it's convenient for me and the king of the underworld. Lin Feng pointed, and a smear of golden light was pulled out from the world passage. It landed in the crack in the void on the other side, and surrounded the black and white chi pillar. Lin Feng's gaze swept across Mirage Sun Yudu outside and he sneered. Between you and me, who exactly is the one underestimating the other? Do you think I'm purely borrowing your power? Yudu Xianhua is not bad, but it's not enough to help me succeed. At least, it's not enough to see results in a short period of time. Tenryu Gen has been holed up in the Xianhai all along, not willing to come out, yet you have delivered yourself to my doorstep. The spell on Lin Feng's hand changed, and he pointed at the primordial golden lamp. The primordial golden lamp, along with the black runes on its surface, started to tremble. You are merely a key. Chapter 1252. The black light markings on the primordial golden lamp finally came to a stop, and the talisman constructed by the light markings was completely completed. This profound talisman trembled continuously with the surface of the primordial golden lamp. Looking at this talisman, Lin Feng's expression had a rare seriousness. A considerable portion of his attention was placed on this talisman. As a result, his disadvantage in the battle against Mirage Sun and Yudu on the other side became even greater. However, Mirage Sun Yudu also felt uneasy. The Yudu Xianhua that had been sucked away by the primordial golden lamp still had a faint connection with him, but when the black talisman was completely formed, Mirage Sun Yudu couldn't feel the movement of the primordial golden lamp and that portion of the Yudu Xianhua anymore. The Yudu Xianhua that had been sucked away seemed to have vanished. It didn't feel like it was refined by Lin Feng, but that Yudu Xianhua had mysteriously vanished from this world. Mirage Sun Yudu was slightly astonished. He had thought that Lin Feng had guided his power away to offer Buddha a borrowed flower, to have some effect and nourish some things. The biggest possibility was to borrow his power to accelerate that ominous sword that had never shown itself. Therefore, Mirage Sun Yudu decisively adapted and adjusted his Yudu Xianhua, so that Lin Feng couldn't borrow power. Even though a portion of the Yudu Xianhua was still sucked away, Mirage Sun Yudu felt that it was no big deal. But looking at it now, the situation was different from what he had imagined. Separated by Jade Capital Mountain and Lin Feng's power, Mirage Sun Yudu couldn't discern what Lin Feng was doing. However, the cultivators of Taishu Temple had sent something up Jade Capital Mountain, and this made Mirage Sun Yudu pay attention to it. At that moment, there seemed to be an astonishing change happening on Jade Capital Mountain. Mirage Sun Yudu could feel that Lin Feng was slightly distracted. He was clearly at a disadvantage, but he still dared to be distracted. Such an abnormal action naturally made Mirage Sun Yudu even more wary. He didn't say anything and just stopped. He no longer moved towards Shi Tianhao, Light Beheader and the rest. Instead, he started to concentrate on attacking Lin Feng. Since you are distracted, since your strength is declining, since you have some kind of plan, then I will simply attack and completely break through your defense, turning all your plans into rootless trees. Before your plan can take effect, I'll kill you first, and all your actions will be in vain. Fantasy Sun and Yuda's attacks suddenly became more urgent, and Lin Feng naturally felt it clearly. However, he didn't care about it. The spells on his hands changed continuously, and waves of magic power were struck out by him. They landed on the black runes in the center of the primordial golden lamp, and the ripples on the black runes became more and more intense. Lin Feng pointed his finger, and a golden light suddenly flew out and fell into the primordial golden lamp, hovering above the black rune. The golden light was none other than the golden alms bowl Lin Feng had obtained from Golden Cicada, the Tathagata relic. The golden alms bowl landed on the black talisman, and both of them shook at the same time. From the golden alms bowl, a brilliance continuously flowed. Within that brilliance, there was a silent area, like a black hole, which seemed to contain an extremely terrifying existence. At that moment, the golden light in the golden alms bowl churned and surged continuously, gradually fusing into the center of the black talisman. The black talisman trembled violently, and numerous ribbon-like streams of light suddenly appeared at the edges of the talisman. They stretched out in all directions, and every stream of light was the materialization of the great Tao of heaven and earth. At that moment, these ribbons of light were connected to the black talisman, and they started to tremble violently along with the talisman. Cries of the great Tao rang out from within. Outside Jade Capital Mountain, Fantasy Sun and Yuda's gaze suddenly focused. The expressions of Dao Venerable Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, Lin Daohan, and the rest in Taishu Temple also changed slightly. What exactly is Lin Feng doing? Doubt appeared in Fantasy Sun and Yuda's eyes. He can't be going through the calamity at this time, right? Isn't that too absurd? What exactly is he doing? Under the shroud of the auspicious clouds, Lin Feng's spell changed again, and he pointed in another direction. The primordial golden lamp carried the black talisman and escaped into the void. Under the guidance of the white light, the primordial golden lamp also floated to the front of the black and white pillar of Qi. The black and white pillar of Qi was surrounded by the power of the three seas: mysterious sea, sanctuary sea, and star sea. Star radiance, white smoke, and golden light intertwined together. When the black talisman on the primordial golden lamp got close, the black and white pillar of Qi and the surrounding star radiance started to tremble together. The power of the three seas seemed to have received some kind of special stimulation, and an abnormal change actually occurred. The surging starlight that was guided out of the two gates of Star Sea became more and more majestic. It surged out in all directions and circled around the black and white pillar of Qi. The power of Sanctuary Sea, which had never been able to descend into the boundless world on a large scale, also became unusually restless at this moment, as if it had been angered. White smoke surged out of the pagoda formed by numerous runes. Its scale and momentum were unprecedentedly strong, and it also protected the black and white pillar of Qi together with the starlight. Under the control of the Dragon Clan, the mysterious sea had always been their exclusive domain. Although Lin Feng took advantage of the battle between the Dragon Clan and the Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror to temporarily open the passage to receive part of the power of the mysterious sea, it could not be used on a large scale. In fact, the Tenryu Gen in the mysterious sea had already noticed that Lin Feng was having more and more difficulty in using the power of the mysterious sea. However, at this moment, a large amount of golden light was drawn out of the mysterious sea, as if it had received some kind of special stimulation. The Dragon Clan, who was wrestling with the Haotian Mirror, could not effectively stop it. The golden light formed by the power of the mysterious sea, the starlight formed by the power of the star sea, and the white smoke formed by the power of the sanctuary sea gathered together and reached a wonderful balance, covering the black and white pillar of Qi. Slowly, the black talisman on the primordial golden lamp flew out independently and landed on the black and white pillar of Qi. The light ribbons formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth around the black talisman broke one by one at this moment. The great Tao of heaven and earth collapsed at this moment, and the black talisman also became fragmented and blurred. In the end, it became a black hole. Suddenly, water surged out of the black hole. It was silent and seemed to have no color. It was neither black nor white, and it was indescribable. However, this water seemed to be the most terrifying existence in the world. Not only did it destroy all life, but it also seemed to be able to destroy the entire creation. Everything in the world, including the creation of the world itself, reached its end and was destroyed. All the spiritual Qi and all the principles no longer existed. The moment this water appeared, outside Jade Capital Mountain, Sun Fantasy Yuda's expression suddenly changed. He didn't trigger the Great Tao's collapse calamity. He opened a crack that leads to the Dead Sea. What was triggered by Lin Feng wasn't the Dharma-ending calamity, nor was it the collapse of the Great Tao. Instead, it was the water formed by the most mysterious power of the Dead Sea and the seven seas of heaven's primordial origin. As soon as this water appeared, countless ribbons of light lit up in the void. All the great Tao of heaven and earth wailed as if it was welcoming the end of the world, the Dharma-ending era. When Lin Feng saw this scene, he laughed. Today is indeed the day. It's really not easy to succeed. The terrifying water of the Dead Sea seemed to be able to destroy everything. Its first target was that black and white pillar of Qi. However, a will that came out of the black and white pillar of Qi didn't feel any fear. Instead, it seemed incomparably excited and impassioned. Meanwhile, the power of the three seas, mysterious sea, sanctuary sea, and star sea seemed to share a common enemy as they faced the water of the Dead Sea together. Although a large amount of star radiance, golden light, and white smoke were destroyed, they were extracted from their respective sources in an even more violent manner, blocking the water of the Dead Sea. The power of both sides clashed continuously, but during this process, The black and white pillar of qi that was protected by the power of the three seas started to guide a large amount of the power of the Dead Sea, which had been moderated, into its own body. The terrifying aura that seemed to want to destroy the world became even more shocking and ruthless at this moment. After the water of the Dead Sea sensed the terrifying aura, it surged even more violently. The light of the great path manifested in the void flickered incessantly, flickering between bright and dark. The universe was shaking as if an extremely terrifying thing was being nurtured. And the moment it was born, it heralded the destruction and end of everything. The speed of its birth was extremely terrifying. In the blink of an eye, it continued to advance by leaps and bounds. Lin Feng didn't just stand by and watch. Instead, after putting away the primordial golden lamp, he continued to inject magic power into the black and white pillar of qi. The aura contained in the black and white pillar of qi kept changing between ruthlessness and peacefulness. This peacefulness didn't hurt its sharpness, but it was like a sharp sword being sheathed. The black hole that was pouring out the water of the Dead Sea was gradually healing, and the water of the Dead Sea was also decreasing. As the water of the Dead Sea decreased, the power of the other three seas started to weaken accordingly. Everything seemed to be gradually returning to peace. Only inside the black and white pillar of qi, the terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth became more and more ferocious, and started to shake the boundless universe. In the end, Lin Feng even retracted the heaven-punishing sword formation that was fighting against Mirage Sun Yudu. The spells on his hands changed together, and then he suddenly brought them together in front of his chest, forming a mysterious mudra and pointing towards the black and white pillar of energy. The black and white pillar of qi suddenly stopped. On the other side, the line of defense of Jade Capital Mountain that had lost Lin Feng's support suddenly collapsed. The jade-colored auspicious clouds were forcefully broken, and the sky was filled with black Yudu. The huge body of Mirage Sun Yudu appeared in front of Lin Feng. But at the same time Lin Feng waved his hand, and the black and white pillar of qi passed through layers of time and space, descending from the sky. The black and white pillar of qi trembled, and then rays of light began to shoot out from within, illuminating the dark void of the universe in front of them. Wherever the light reached, the world of creation began to be torn apart. Mirage Sun Yudu looked at the black and white pillar of qi in front of him, and his expression was unprecedentedly solemn. In the distance, Dao Venerable Xian Yi and the rest had extremely complicated expressions. At this moment, the black and white pillar of qi gradually collapsed, and an incomparably terrifying power spread out from within, becoming clearer and clearer. Between heaven and earth, countless rays of the great Tao lit up. Then they wailed, trembled, and trembled. They couldn't resist and broke apart, spreading in all directions. The entire great heaven primordial world was shaken at this moment. Chapter 1253. The crack in the Dead Sea had already closed completely. The black and white pillar of qi disintegrated at this moment. Endless light emerged from it and spread in all directions. Then, the light gradually gathered and rushed up, forming a light pillar at the top of Yujing Mountain. The huge Yujing Mountain and the lush branches of the mysterious heaven treasure tree were shaking at this moment. In the Xiantian Eternal Light Cave, the disheveled old man who seemed to care about nothing stopped what he was doing and raised his head. His eyes were lifeless, as if there was no focus in them. He just stared blankly at the sky. The next moment he suddenly wiped the chessboard with his trembling hand. The chess pieces flew back into the chess box, leaving only an empty chessboard. Then the old man took the chess pieces out of the box and began to set up a new chess game on the empty chessboard. The light pillar was neither black nor white. Its color was chaotic and indistinct. It revealed a power that could destroy heaven and earth. All the evil qi in the great Tianyuan world was activated at this moment. Plants withered, living beings perished, and spiritual qi dissipated. All the evil qi in the world gathered toward the light pillar, and condensed into a sharp sword. The whole world turned into a long sword at this moment. It was a sword of the end. As the sword light flashed, heaven and earth trembled. Ding of Shenzhou, which Lin Feng had placed in the yin and yang life and death formation, kept shaking at this moment. It emitted a mental fluctuation of extreme fear and even terror. The Taishu temple in Xiandao Master's hands shook and disintegrated, turning back into the supreme formation-breaking drum, and the void yin-yang bell. Zhu Yi, who was far away at the southern wasteland realm's passageway, looked at the changes in the sky and earth, and the turbulent flow of the evil qi. He could feel the Permetha golden bridge beneath his feet trembling nonstop at this moment. Although he was far away, he could clearly feel fear. On the netherworld altar, the king of the underworld, who was on the verge of success in activating the ritual, looked extremely serious. His hands kept changing the incantation gestures, and he continued to carry out the ritual with all his might. Around the altar, both the Book of Life and Death in Yu Ming's hands and the Supreme Imperial Palace controlled by Liang Pan in the void were shaken. The Book of Life and Death moved on its own even though there was no wind. The pages kept flipping, and Taoist Yu Ming could not control it even if he wanted to. The Supreme Imperial Palace, which was the pinnacle of magic treasures refined by human sovereigns, was so powerful that even the Book of Life and Death couldn't raise its head. At this moment, the purple and gold light was flashing crazily. It was like a majestic and domineering emperor. Even in the face of extreme threats, it refused to bow its head and submit. The vast light and shadow continued to condense in the sky above the Supreme Imperial Palace. But even so, the majestic Imperial Palace, which was like a heavenly palace, also showed an uncontrollable state. It was as if a person was involuntarily trembling, and the emperor's aura instantly wilted. Within Tianjing City, a gigantic wheel of light that seemed to be formed from the myriad worlds of the heavens appeared. As it rotated, it attracted the power of creation. It rose into the sky above Tianjing City and rotated rapidly. Its rotation speed was so fast that it seemed like it would go out of control at any moment. Outside the vast thousand worlds, in the boundless void, there was a city wall that stretched as far as the eye could see. Silently, it stretched across the dark universe as if it had fallen into a deep slumber. But at this moment, the great wall suddenly shook violently. It was as if someone had been awakened from a deep slumber, or as if they had fallen into a nightmare that they couldn't extricate themselves from. Suddenly, a domain passageway split open in the vast thousand worlds. Within it, thousands of calamities such as the True Blood River, the Nether Evil Light, and the 9 Nether Evil Winds surged together. It was the scene of doomsday in the Netherworld Sea. As the red light flickered in the Netherworld Sea, it converged to form a gigantic stone pillar. It was the magic treasure of creation born from the Netherworld Sea, the Heavenly Admonition. The Heavenly Admonition, which had always made other living beings feel that disaster was ominous and made them panic and worry, was actually trembling slightly at this moment. It was as if it was extremely uneasy. Under the influence of the Heavenly Admonition, the waves of the Netherworld Sea went berserk, setting off countless destructive storms. In the great heaven primordial world, all the magic treasures of creation that had reached the level of creation could not help but be attracted at this moment. They could not help but tremble slightly, regardless of whether it was the majestic and domineering Supreme Imperial Palace, or the majestic and heavy ding of Shenzhou that suppressed the divine land. All the magic treasures of creation, no matter how they resisted or how they tried to conceal themselves, could feel a kind of emotion from them. Fear. In addition to a deep sense of dread, there was also the emotion of fear. It was as if they were facing an opponent that they absolutely could not defeat. Even if they were unwilling to surrender and tried their best to resist, they could not ignore the objective gap in strength. Thus they naturally felt fear. On Yujing Mountain, the gate of Starsea and the Ying Sea symbol tower had disappeared. Only the primitive ancient formation was left, which still opened up the boundary and led to the mysterious sea. The mysterious sea was constantly rising and falling. In the sea, there seemed to be a mirror light, which was also attracted by the unparalleled sword on Yujing Mountain. It was the #1 magic treasure of the great heaven primordial world since ancient times, the Haotian mirror. But at this moment, the incomplete Haotian mirror, after feeling the world-destroying sharpness, also emitted a deep sense of dread. That is the Haotian mirror. Dao Master Qing Ning looked a little lost. Even if it is incomplete, it is still the Haotian mirror. Fu Yunкong sighed. There has never been a magic treasure that could put such pressure on the Haotian mirror alone. Dao Master Xianyi and Kuang Heng looked at this scene in silence. Lin Daohan said slowly. Uncle Master Qing Ning, Uncle Master Fu, you should have felt it too, right? Dao Master Qing Ning and Fu Yingkong did not speak, but they naturally felt it. Not only them, but all the top experts in the divine land and even the entire great heaven primordial world, whether they were in the vast thousand worlds or in the dimensional spaces of the medium worlds, felt it. The creation of heaven and earth was shaken. Whether it was the human experts or the great demons, they all clearly felt that an extremely terrifying and powerful existence had come to this world. This kind of feeling was something that some of the older people had experienced before. In history, when the Haotian mirror was restored, it would cause the entire great heaven primordial world to be shaken just like this. It was as if it was announcing to the world that the king had returned. All the experts in the great heaven primordial world, whether they were humans or demons, whether they were fighting or not, had the same thought in their minds. That sword has reappeared. The master of the celestial sect of wonders has finally succeeded. In the history of the great heaven primordial world, the first magic treasure that can truly rival the perfect Haotian mirror has appeared. Its lethality might even surpass the Haotian mirror. On Jade Capital Mountain, two beams of light, one black and one white, suddenly flashed out from the pillar of light that pierced through the heavens and earth. The white light turned into a boy and came to Lin Feng's side, while the black light suddenly expanded between heaven and earth, turning into a terrifying spell formation that could destroy all life. With the pillar of light as the center, it kept spinning. A figure slowly walked out of the pillar of light. It was a tall woman who looked to be in her 20s. Her hair was indistinguishable, and it was neither black nor white. Her face was peerless. Her eyes flashed with an indescribable mysterious brilliance, like the water of the Dead Sea. After this woman appeared, the entire world lost its color. Mirage Sun Yuda looked at that woman, and his brows furrowed. The creation magic treasure of the human race, the primordial spirit of the magic treasure, shouldn't manifest a human form. What exactly? Just as he was thinking, he saw the woman's gaze suddenly looking at him. Her gaze was like a sharp sword light, and as it flashed coldly, it caused the resplendent black profound light that filled the sky to dim down. Mirage Sun Yudu's heart trembled. You are indeed the primordial spirit of that ferocious sword? The woman didn't reply. She raised her right hand, and light flowed in her palm, gathering to form a long sword. The blade of the sword was covered in a chaotic and blurry color, as if everything was coming to an end. Creation was coming to an end, returning to nothingness. Meanwhile, at the edge of the sword, there were two spots of flowing light, one black and one white. They flowed and slid continuously at the edge of the sword, and the terrifying sword will made people tremble in fear. The woman raised the long sword high in her right hand and pointed at the void above her head. The majestic pillar of light and the malevolent air that came from all directions were guided along with her action of raising the sword. All of them gathered at the tip of the sword, forming an air pillar that bystanders couldn't see with their eyes, but could feel its existence. This air pillar seemed to connect the heaven primordial world, and right after that, the woman swung her right hand down and slashed at Mirage Sun Yuda's head. The three long horns on Mirage Sun Yuda's head flashed with brilliance, and black divine markings filled the void. A resplendent black light shot out from the heart of his brows and fused into a brilliant galaxy. The ribbons of light that were formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth were completely swallowed by the black profound light. The ear-piercing wail of the great Tao became hoarse and low, revealing a sense of despair and terror. However, the blade of the sword that slashed down was even more ruthless, even more violent, and even more invincible. As the blade of the sword slashed down, that terrifying power completely burst forth. The distant sanctuary sea was shaken, and the boundless white clouds suddenly tumbled and shattered. In the mysterious sea, large amounts of golden light exploded, and in the galaxy, countless star projections were destroyed, raising a storm of starlight. In the empty sea, void storms wreaked havoc and tore open terrifying cracks in time and space. In the netherworld sea, the red pillar of light that heavenly calamity had transformed into shook violently, and tens of thousands of calamities and tribulations wreaked havoc in the netherworld sea. This sword startled the 5 seas of heaven primordial world. The incomparable sharpness forcefully slashed apart the Yudu profound flower of Mirage Sun Yudu. The black profound light and the resplendent starlight crumbled together, and the light that was formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth completely dissipated. This was the sword of Tao annihilation, and it could destroy all the Tao in the world. Mirage Sun Yuda's eyes were filled with astonishment, and his body suddenly lit up with purple light. A broken horn appeared, and world-shaking purple runes appeared. It was the Yudu profound flower. That was the broken horn that Yuhuang Tianhai had left behind after her death, and it was kept by Mirage Sun Yudu. He couldn't actively use the power inside, but he could use it to protect himself. At this moment, it was activated by that terrifying sword, and the dazzling Yudu profound flower spewed out from the horn. Even though it wasn't as powerful as the descent of Yuhuang Tianhai, the light transformed into a purple barrier that instantly severed the heavens. Even Mirage Sun Yudu's full-powered attack couldn't break through the defense of this purple light barrier. However, under the slash of that terrifying sword of Tao annihilation, the purple light barrier was still shattered. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a grunt, and his body moved back hurriedly. Black light that was like blood scattered through the sky. After that woman slashed out, she turned to look at Lin Feng, who was at the side. She saw Lin Feng looking at her with a faint smile on his face. When she saw Lin Feng, the woman had no emotions to speak of. Her cold and exquisite face that was like a doll seemed to change slightly, and there was light flashing in her indifferent eyes. The terrifying sword vanished from her palm, and the woman lowered her head to Lin Feng. She said softly, "My lord." Chapter 1254. Lin Feng looked at the woman in front of him and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Xianli." The woman who had forced back Sun Mirage and Yudu was none other than Xianli, and the terrifying world annihilation sword was naturally heaven-punishing sword. Lin Feng stretched out a hand to her, and she lowered her head gently. Her sharp and cold gaze softened slightly, and she walked to Lin Feng's side. She also stretched out a hand and placed it on Lin Feng's palm. Specks of light started to float on her body, and she gradually disappeared as though she had transformed into a flowing light. The light continued to gather on Lin Feng's palm, and finally transformed into a longsword. The style of the longsword wasn't very outstanding, but the surface of the blade was flashing with a mysterious, chaotic, and blurry light. It gave off an astonishing fiendish will. All the fiendish chi in heaven primordial great world was gathering on the blade, making this ominous sword even more evil. The blade itself didn't show any color of gold or iron, as though it wasn't made of metal. Instead, it was like a pool of autumn water with light flowing around it. However, the color of the water was hard to distinguish. It was neither black nor white, and even though it was flashing with light, it gave off a feeling of death and stillness. It was like the terrifying water of the Dead Sea. Lin Feng held the heaven-punishing sword in his hand, feeling the concept of power contained within as well as every detail of the entire magic treasure inside and out. Very quickly, he understood the current state of this peerlessly vicious sword. The power of Tao annihilation is extremely strong, and it's indisputably the strongest magic treasure in the history of Heaven Primordial Great World. In the entire Heaven Primordial Great World, only the Dead Sea could be more fiendish and inauspicious. Lin Feng thought to himself. However, because the power of Tao annihilation is too strong, it has become a double-edged sword. If I'm not careful, I might hurt myself instead. This was within Lin Feng's expectations. He had sealed heaven-punishing sword all these years, and while he was raising its power, he had also been dealing with this problem. If I let profoundly execute it on her own, she'll probably lose control in less than 3 strikes. If I control it, I should be able to execute 5 strikes in a short period of time. Lin Feng quickly came to a conclusion. Xianli used one sword just now and left another one as a backup. So there are 3 more swords left. His lips curled into a faint smile. That's enough. Lin Feng gripped the Heaven Destroyer sword in his hand and raised it above his head. Wherever the sword pointed, the heaven and earth evil chi gathered and shot up into the sky, spinning nonstop in the void, turning into a giant vortex. The power of the yin and yang life and death formation began to operate again. Together with the radiance of Yujing Mountain, it supported Lin Feng's body. At the same time, the black and white divine light of fate on Lin Feng's body began to surge, making him look like a deity descending to the mortal world. The dark void of the universe was boundless, but at this moment, it seemed to have been completely filled by that huge vortex, turning the entire void into a vortex. The vortex formed by the heaven and earth evil qi shook the boundless universe, as though the entire creation was welcoming the end of the world. Dao Venerable Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, and Lin Daohan, who had returned to reinforce White Cloud Mountain and rebuilt the 9 heavens of the Great Void Palace, had solemn expressions when they saw this. Being in the 9 heavens of the Great Void Palace of White Cloud Mountain, they could only prevent themselves from being affected by the aftermath. If they were to face it head-on, with the current lineup of people left behind to guard Taishu Temple, and the power of the 9 heavens of the Great Void Palace, they wouldn't be able to withstand the power of one strike from the Heaven Destroyer sword even if they defended with all their might. Phantom Sun Yuda's expression was extremely solemn. His left claw was holding on to the broken horn that came from Yuhuang's celestial sea, while there was a wound on his right claw. Purple blood that flickered with a black glow flowed continuously from it. It couldn't be stopped, and it kept floating in the void. The turbulence in the void of the boundless universe was also affecting the boundless universe. The reappearance of the Heaven Destroyer sword shook the entire boundless universe. In the Divine Land, Shi Tianhao and White Tiger Great Sage, who had already beaten Zhan Ming and Yudu to the point that they couldn't retaliate, had no choice but to retreat after learning that Green Crest Yudu, Jingyan Yudu, and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu had left White Cloud Mountain to attack them. The situation instantly reversed, and it became a situation where Green Crest Yudu and the rest chased after Shi Tianhao and White Tiger Great Sage. This made Shi Tianhao, Great Chanyu of the Northern Militant, and the rest extremely depressed. However, when the Heaven Destroyer sword's power shook the boundless universe, Green Crest Yudu, Jingyan Yudu, and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu naturally felt that terrifying power. Even someone as arrogant as them had to stop and observe the situation at that moment. That vicious whirlpool that seemed to have shrouded the entire boundless universe made them feel like there was a blade on their backs. Lin Feng didn't care about them. He didn't even look at Sun Mirage Yudu in front of him. Instead, he raised his head to look at the Heaven Destroyer sword in his hand. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Little girl, don't be arrogant. You still have room for improvement in the future. The Heaven Destroyer sword gave off a long cry, and Lin Feng's gaze passed through the nameless ancient formation that was still in operation to look at the Xianhai world on the other side of the boundary. On the other side of the boundary, the black sea that was flashing with golden light was trembling nonstop. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly, and his gaze passed through the layers of obstacles. Gradually, countless lights and shadows were reflected in his eyes, changing unpredictably. In the depths of the Xianhai world, there was a mirror light that was standing in the center of the Xianhai storm. It was like a piece of reef that was fixed on the surface of the sea. The mirror light came from a round mirror that had no frame or frame. It was just a round mirror that looked like the sun and moon hanging high up in the sky. It looked insignificant, yet it gave people a feeling that it was as vast as the sky. It was as though it was the center of the universe, and everything surrounded and gathered around it. Even in the Xianhai that was controlled by the dragon race, ribbons of light extended out from the void and connected to the surroundings of the mirror. As the mirror light flickered, it trembled nonstop, triggering the resonance of all the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was the Haotian mirror. Under the shroud of the Haotian mirror's light, there were a few figures sitting cross-legged. The magic power in their bodies circulated to form a ball of light that seemed illusory yet real. The ball of light was split into 9 layers, and it looked like the 9 heavens of the Great Void Imperial Court. There was a group of people in the ball of light, and the leader was an elder with his eyes tightly shut. He was naturally Lord Taiwan. The others sat behind him, and they were all circulating their magic power to condense the 9 heavens of the Great Void Imperial Court. They then added their power to the Haotian mirror, forming a hole to resist the raging waves from the Xianhai world. A figure floated above the head of the Supreme Solitary Tao Lord. It was ethereal and profound, causing others to be unable to see its appearance clearly, yet they would naturally arouse the thought of prostrating themselves in worship. It was as if it was the Heaven Tao. Lin Feng looked at the light figure, and his eyes flickered slightly. Is this the foundation left behind by the Taishu Taoist? No wonder it could last so long in the Xianhai world, but it will end here. Although separated by layers of void, Lin Feng could see that the light figure above Lord Taiwan's had originated from a talisman in Lord Taiwan's hand. Although it was not a one-time use, its power was constantly weakening under continuous consumption. It seemed that it would take a long time to recover after this. That is, if the people of the Taishu Temple could still survive this calamity. Although the Haotian mirror stood in the Xianhai world like a stabilizing needle, protecting Lord Taiwan and the others, anyone could clearly see that the power of the Haotian mirror was constantly declining. It was not that the Haotian mirror was further damaged, and its power was weakening, but this magic treasure seemed to be gradually calming down, making it impossible for Lord Taiwan and the others to freely use its current full power. Lin Feng looked up, and in another direction, on the other side of the void, there was another gap in the Xianhai world. From that gap, streams of light flew out and fell on the Haotian mirror. It was under the influence of this stream of light that the Haotian mirror became more and more unstable. Within the waves of the mysterious sea, there was an enormous golden figure faintly discernible, continuously bobbing up and down in the pitch-black seawater. An unprecedentedly vast draconic aura emanated from within. This is the most powerful draconic aura that Lin Feng has personally come into contact with. Needless to say, that was the current clan leader of the Dragon Clan, the Yuan Dragon King. This great demon of the Dragon Clan controlled the storm that filled the sky, wreaking havoc in the Xianhai world, attacking the defense line formed by the Haotian mirror and the 9 heavens of the Taishu Temple. Under the continuous impact of the monstrous flood, the dam was already unable to bear the burden, and at this moment, there were people drilling holes in the dam. At this moment, the defense line of the Haotian mirror and Lord Taiwan, and the others was finally broken by the Yuan Dragon King and the Xianhai world. The black seawater that filled the sky began to wash away the last reef in the center of the sea. At this moment, the 9 heavens of the Taishu Temple shattered, and streams of light flew in all directions. As for the Haotian mirror, it shook and was swept up by the seawater. On the other side of the void, a deep voice came from the gap in the void realm. Order! That was the voice of the king of the underworld. Following this deep voice, the streams of light that extended out from the gap still wrapped tightly around the Haotian mirror, then swept up the Haotian mirror and quickly retracted it. A shocking dragon roar came from the Xianhai world, and the black seawater wrapped around the Haotian mirror, refusing to let go. Although he could not establish a connection with the Haotian mirror like Yan Xinghe, the Yuan Dragon King, who was using the power of the Xianhai world, was much stronger than Yan Xinghe. On the netherworld altar, the king of the underworld held the long banner in his hand and looked at this scene coldly. His hand seals changed continuously and he shouted again, "Go!" As he shouted, the long banner in his hand suddenly shattered, and the Xianhai world in front of him began to disappear. Suddenly, a shocking power exploded, shaking the Xianhai world, and Yan Xinghe's evil soul began to use all its strength to activate the Haotian mirror. At this moment, the Haotian mirror suddenly lit up, and its power surged, as if it was being activated again. Lord Tai and the others were trapped in the Xianhai world, and it was difficult for them to move. Although the Yuan Dragon King was distracted by the Haotian mirror, he did not ignore them. The Kunlun Dragon King appeared from the sea, and with the support of the power of the Xianhai world, his power surged, and he pounced towards them. The battle between the 3 parties had reached the final juncture, and at this moment, Lin Feng's voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. King of the underworld, I have said before that this era does not belong to you. In the void, Lin Feng raised the heaven-punishing sword and slashed down. The power of the huge whirlpool suddenly condensed, turning into a formless sword edge, and actually pierced through the realm tunnel created by the primitive ancient formation, directly attacking the Xianhai world. The violent power slashed into the space of the Xianhai world, and the Haotian mirror shook violently. The Xianhai world and the dragon race, the Taishu Temple, the king of the underworld and Yan Xinghe, and the 2 great treasures clashed, forming a destructive domain. The Xianhai world, one of the 7 seas of Tianyuan, was forcibly torn open, and all the formless spiritual energy and tangible things were annihilated together. But Lin Feng's violent sword edge did not stop there, and it continued forward. The terrifying sword edge that could destroy the heaven and earth. After cutting off the light flow that Yan Xinghe's spiritual energy had attached to the Haotian mirror, continued to attack the gap that the king of the underworld had created. Chapter 1255. In the void, Lin Feng's terrifying sword slashed through the air and cut off the intense fight between the dragon race, the Taishu temple, and the king of the underworld over the Haotian mirror. As one of the 7 seas of heavenly primordial heaven, a huge crack appeared in the boundless Xian Sea at this moment. The scale of this crack was much larger than the crack that Lin Feng had opened with the primitive ancient formation, and the king of the underworld had opened with his banner. It tore the sky of the Xian Sea apart like a scar in the sky. The connection between the dragon race, the Taishu temple, and the king of the underworld to the Haotian mirror was severed at this moment. Lin Feng's sword did not stop there. It continued to chase after the king of the underworld through the crack in the netherworld sea. The king of the underworld had destroyed his banner earlier, causing the crack to be destroyed as well. It gradually started to close up. But the ruthless edge of the sword that could annihilate the heavens and annihilate the Tao swept through everything before it. It forcefully slashed apart the spatial domain that was gradually distorting and closing up, and it once again tore open an enormous gap there. After that, it directly broke through the void of the domain and descended from the sky above the netherworld sacrificial altar. This sword passed through 2 boundary passageways and crossed the Xian Sea. Because of the previous collision and the shuttling of the Xianhai realm, when the sword descended on the netherworld altar, it no longer had the terrifying power that seemed to be able to completely destroy the world. However, when the invisible sword edge that gathered the vicious aura of the universe appeared in the sky above the netherworld altar, everyone present still felt like their guts were going to explode. Without any hesitation, Gu Jun immediately activated the longevity lotus seat and swept Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Yuankai, and the others away. He retreated rapidly. Liang Pan's expression was as calm as water. However, his movements were even faster than Gu Jun's as he urged the Grand Imperial Palace to retreat. The king of the underworld, who had been completely locked onto by this sword and had nowhere to run, had an extremely solemn expression. His eyes turned completely black, like the darkest abyss in the world. He said in a deep voice, "Sacrifice." The 3 life and death netherworld Tao fruits flew out, and Taoist Blood River, who was guarding the netherworld sacrificial altar, let out a loud sigh. He seemed to be resentful and relieved, and then he was enveloped by the black light formed from the 3 Tao fruits, and kept within the netherworld sacrificial altar. His body began to slowly turn into dust on the black altar, without making a single sound. On the other hand, the black altar that had completely activated the netherworld ritual to its limits grew stronger, more profound and more evil. The king of the underworld took the Book of Life and Death from Taoist Yuming's hands. As the Book of Life and Death flipped through it, it fused with the power of the netherworld ritual. At practically the same time, the terrifying sword that could destroy the heavens and the earth struck the netherworld altar. Countless black lights instantly shattered and shot out in all directions. The splattering light was like a black rain of light in the void. Some of the Yama King, Emoshilua, and even the netherworld royal brush who were attached to the black sacrificial altar fled in all directions. Some of them stayed close to the sacrificial altar, hoping that they could escape this calamity. However, at this moment, all of the underworld hall cultivators were engulfed by the terrifying sword projections and the black rain of light. All of them were riddled with holes. Even Tao integration stage cultivators like King Yanluo and Mo Shilua were unable to defend themselves. Their primordial spirits were shattered by the sword projections that shot out from the rain of light, and they died on the spot. Taoist Yuming, who was undergoing tribulation, wailed in anguish, and his primordial spirit was also riddled with wounds. The king of the underworld and Yan Xinghe's evil soul were the most powerful on the altar, but they were also the primary targets of Lin Feng's attack. Even though the power of the netherworld ritual had formed a barrier, it was still instantly sliced through by the terrifying sword projections. Black light swirled around the king of the underworld's body, and Yanxinghe's body glowed with great void mystic light. They stood in front of the king of the underworld, but the two of them were also pierced through by the sword projections. The book of life and death vibrated incessantly, and its pages twisted and contorted violently in the void. Then, it emitted a piercing sound as its pages were shredded and torn apart. It was as if they were pieces of paper fluttering in the void. There were many holes all over the king of the underworld's body, and black light seeped out from the holes. It was as if he was bleeding, and it couldn't be stopped at all as it covered his entire body. The human form formed by his primordial spirit had his right arm and shoulder disappear, and a vast amount of black light gushed out. Meanwhile, the terrifying sword projections that blotted out heaven and earth still rained down like a torrential rain, carving out mournful fissures in the void one after another. Ha! The king of the underworld roared, and his finger pointed at the black vortex that had enveloped Yanxinghe. The vortex spun in reverse again, and as it spun rapidly, it exploded. The king of the underworld used the life and death underworld Dao fruit to collect Yanxinghe's remnant soul, which was even more severely injured, and the book of life and death, as well as Taoist Yu Ming, who was on his last breath. The black vortex exploded and transformed into a black light that swept up the king of the underworld, and he instantly disappeared. The entire lineage of the king of the underworld, under Lin Feng's sword that traversed through realms, was on the brink of extinction. The king of the underworld was severely injured, Blood River Taoist's evil soul was completely destroyed, Taoist Yu Ming was on the brink of death, and the book of life and death was severely damaged. All the cultivators of the underworld hall, starting from King Yama and King Taishan, Mo Shuluo, were completely annihilated. This terrifying sword made Emperor Zhou, Liang Pan and Gujun fall silent. Gujun paused for a moment, then drove the longevity lotus throne to chase after the king of the underworld. After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, Liang Pan also urged the Grand Imperial Palace to chase after the king of the underworld. In the mysterious sea, after witnessing Lin Feng's ruthless sword intent, the experts of the dragon race and Taishu Temple all felt a chill in their hearts. The mysterious sea, which was previously in a state of chaos, actually had a short moment of peace at this moment. All that was left was that shocking crack that was constantly twisting. As for the Haotian mirror, it floated in the void and was sucked away by that crack, flying out of the mysterious sea. The dragon race and Taishu Temple came back to their senses at the same time. Dragon roars filled the sky, and the mysterious sea shook violently again. It wanted to mend the crack and leave the Haotian mirror behind. In the camp of Taishu Temple, Dao Venerable Tai, Shoichi Dashan, and Dao Venerable Qingyi stood side by side. Behind them were Wu Mengqi, Dao Venerable Yu Yuan, and the rest. Shoichi Dashan said solemnly, "In the end he still managed to refine that ruthless sword. If we didn't enter the mysterious sea, our temple wouldn't have been shaken by the king of the underworld. Even if we had to fight against the Yudu race, the Haotian mirror wouldn't have been shaken by that scoundrel, the king of the underworld. As a result, the situation wouldn't have deteriorated to such an extent." Dao Venerable Qingyi's face was pale, and his expression was cold. "It looks like he turned the tide, but he used this chance to exhaust our temple, helping him to dominate the world. From now on, even our temple will find it hard to restrain him and his ruthless sword that could harm the world." Dao Venerable Qingyi closed his eyes tightly. The most important thing now is to regain control of the Haotian mirror and leave the mysterious sea. This battle is no longer suitable. After saying that, determination flashed across his face, and he once again raised the rune that had manifested the figure of the Taishu Taoist. The pure white rune that was flashing with a faint golden radiance flew into the sky and suddenly burst into flames. Its powerful power fixed the crack in the mysterious sea that was twisting non-stop. As Dao Venerable Qingyi shouted, he swept up the people of Taishu Temple beside him and rushed toward the crack. The dragon's roar resounded through the mysterious sea, and it ignored Lin Feng's attack on the king of the underworld. It focused all its attention on the people of Taishu Temple and the Haotian mirror. Yuan Dragon King and Kunlun Dragon King rushed out of the sea together, sweeping up monstrous black water and golden light. They formed a violent wave that covered the sky and covered the earth as they attacked the crack. The sorrowful wail of the great Tao was like rolling thunder, shaking the minds of the people of Taishu Temple, and making them feel dizzy. The burning rune in the void blocked the power of the mysterious sea in front of them, but it was quickly broken through. In the violent wave that filled the sky, Dao Venerable Qingyi and Shoichi Dashin both groaned miserably. They had suffered serious injuries, and Dao Venerable Qingyi, who was already seriously injured, was directly grabbed by a huge dragon claw formed by the seawater of the mysterious sea. But without the interference of Yin Xinghe's evil soul, Dao Venerable Qingyi quickly used the Haotian mirror to block the power of the mysterious sea. However, Dao Venerable Qingyi's vital spirit had already been crushed by the huge dragon claw formed by the seawater. Dao Venerable Qingyi, one of the 4 venerated elders of Taishu Temple, an expert in the Dharma-ending realm who had already started cultivating in the Middle Era, had fallen. Dao Venerable Qingyi and Shoichi Dashin did not have the time to feel sorry for him. They could only bear the pain and roll up the other cultivators of Taishu Temple, and rush out of the crack of the mysterious sea that was about to close again. At this time, Lin Feng also smashed the altar of the king of the underworld with a sword. Separated by the void realm channel, Lin Feng's gaze calmly looked at the rolling waves in the mysterious sea. He did not say anything else and once again raised the sky-crushing sword in his hand. Fate Creation Boy, who was beside him, revealed the original form of the Fate Creation Bell. As the bell rang, it turned into the river of time and flowed around Yujing Mountain silently. His divine sense and Dharma power were all added to Lin Feng's body. The terrifying sword formation above Lin Feng's head was also activated. This was not formed by Lin Feng's Dharma power and sword will, but the original version, the real sky-crushing sword formation. As Lin Feng raised his sword this time, an even more ferocious and powerful Tao-destroying sword will emerged, causing the entire void of the universe to tremble and endless evil qi to gather. In the mysterious sea, although Tao Master Qingyi was killed, the anger of Yuan Dragon King and Kunlun Dragon King could not be appeased. At this moment, when they saw Lin Feng take the initiative to attack, they could not help but let out a deafening roar. Their anger and fighting spirit completely erupted. They did not cut off the void realm channel created by Lin Feng. Instead, they roused the endless power of the mysterious sea to attack Lin Feng. Feeling the ferocious realm of destruction of the Great Way and creation from Lin Feng's sky-crushing sword, the mysterious sea also became violent. It was even more violent than when it injured the people in the Taishu Temple. Lin Feng's expression did not change as he slashed down with his sword. As the sword fell, not only did the mysterious sea in front of him shake, but the Ying Sea, the Star Sea, the Empty Sea, and the Underworld Sea were also shaken. What was even more terrifying was that the Spirit Sea, which seemed to be everywhere in the boundless thousand worlds, suddenly shook. The sky was full of flowing light, which was formed by the great way of heaven and earth. In the 7 seas of Tianyuan, the mysterious and powerful Spirit Sea, which was even more powerful than the mysterious sea, was also shocked by the sword will of the sky-crushing sword. Lin Feng's third sword move shocked the 6 seas of Tianyuan. Tenryu Zhen, didn't you change your temperament and want to concentrate on enduring? Then just endure it, and stay in the profound sea for me. If you dare to leave the profound sea while I'm in the great thousand world, I'll kill you. Lin Feng's tone was casual. As he spoke, the terrifying sword that could destroy heaven and earth and destroy all Daos fell down, splitting the black sea that was flashing with golden light. The mysterious sea realm shook violently, as if it was going to be torn apart again. A muffled groan came from the sea, and in the space, golden dragon scales seemed to fall off and fall into the sea. Chapter 1256. At that moment, on the surface of the Xianhai Sea, waves rolled continuously. The black seawater was still surging with towering waves, and golden light filled the entire world. In the air, spots of golden light floated down and sank into the Black Sea. They were golden dragon scales. The dragon scales of the ancient heavenly dragons. Looking from afar, they looked like specks of golden light against the backdrop of the boundless ocean. But in fact, each dragon scale was incomparably huge, with a circumference of an acre. Just a single dragon scale contained a vast amount of demonic energy. Those were the dragon scales that belonged to the current leader of the dragon race. Tenryu General Lin Feng's powerful sword had forcefully broken through the power of the Xianhai Sea and sliced them off. At this moment, the surface of the Xianhai Sea was split into two halves. The seawater parted to the sides, revealing an abyss-like ravine. There was nothing in the ravine. There was no water, air, or anything else. It had been completely annihilated and returned to chaos. After Lin Feng's sword, the seawater gathered back into the ravine. The power of the boundary surged to rebuild space, time, and matter, filling up the gap in the void. Meanwhile, the realm passage that Lin Feng had created through the primitive ancient formation had completely collapsed. The distorted void of the realm continued to spread, and the gap gradually closed up. The surface of the Xianhai Sea gradually calmed down, and the golden light on the black seawater also became much gentler. The damaged Xianhai Sea seemed to have recovered to normal after a series of fierce battles. However, be it the strong practitioners of the dragon race or Lin Feng, they could all feel that the power of the Xianhai Sea had fallen into a trough. It was no longer as mighty as it had been at its peak. Dragon roars rang out from the surface of the sea. That was the voice of Yuan Dragon King, but it also seemed a little weak. The current strongest practitioner of the dragon race had successfully survived the calamity and recovered from his weakened state. However, he couldn't even take a step out of the Xianhai Sea. There was no need to describe the anger and frustration in his heart. However, Lin Feng's third sword had made Yuan Dragon King know that if he left the protection of the Xianhai Sea, that terrifying power was not something he could withstand alone. There was no doubt about it. Beside Lin Feng, Mirage Sun Yudu, who was standing in the void, witnessed the power of Lin Feng's heaven punishment sword and had no choice but to admit this point. Lin Feng's third sword made Mirage Sun Yudu feel as though he had returned to over 4,000 years ago. He was facing his elder brother, the #1 person in the history of Yudu race, the strongest expert of the current era, Yuhuang Tianhai. His gaze fell on the heaven-punishing sword in Lin Feng's hand. This peerless, ominous sword had been honed for many years. Today, it was tempered by Lin Feng with the power of the Dead Sea. After the second sacrificial offering, it had successfully advanced to the next level. It was now aiming for the throne of the King of Heavenly Origin Magical Treasures. Before the clear sky mirror recovered to its peak, the Sky Destroyer sword was undeniably the #1 magical treasure in Tianyuan. Its power was unparalleled. Qingyuan Jingyan, take Kong Yuan and the rest and retreat immediately. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a long sigh and gave the order. Previously, when their Yudu race had returned to the boundless world, Taihua Mountain had collapsed by itself under their pressure. After that, they had attacked White Cloud Mountain and broken the 9 heavens of the Great Void Empire. Under the transmission of their power, they had almost destroyed the Great Qin Empire's capital, West Hill City. This made everyone in the Divine Land feel insecure and jittery. Even when Lin Feng had first arrived at White Cloud Mountain to support them, he was suppressed by Mirage Sun Yudu. Meanwhile, the other strong practitioners of Yudu fought until the remaining line of defense in Taishu Temple was on the verge of collapse. It was as though a massacre could happen at any time. However, in the blink of an eye, all of their advantages vanished like smoke in thin air. At this moment, it was time for Mirage Sun Yudu and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu race to think about how they could retreat under Lin Feng's sword. Qing Wan, Yudu Jingyan, and the rest looked at Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and the rest, and they were all depressed. However, even if they were in the Divine Land, they could still clearly feel the terrifying sword force of Lin Feng. At this moment, they could only retreat helplessly. Lin Feng's gaze retracted from the crack of the mysterious sea that was gradually closing up. He said indifferently, "You want to leave now? How can it be so easy?" As he said that, Lin Feng raised his sword again. The ferocious will of world destruction shook the boundless world, and the 6 seas of heaven's origin sector. Countless streams of light condensed and manifested by the great Tao of heaven and earth didn't even have time to wail before they were destroyed. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a long howl, and the 3 horns on his head flashed with black light markings. The black light markings gradually turned silver and condensed at the tip of the 3 horns to form 3 silver balls of light. These 3 silver balls of light gradually gathered together, and blurred into a lump of light and shadow. The scene that appeared in the light and shadow was a dimensional world shrouded in black fog. In the depths of the black fog stood an incomparably huge city. That city was completely black, but it was flashing with silver light. The strong contrast was extremely glaring. This city had layers and layers that rose straight into the sky. It was vast and boundless. It was as though an incomparably huge mountain range had been hollowed out in the middle to build such a city. Silver-white light condensed in the city and rushed into the sky, breaking through the black fog and going straight into the void. It was Yudu Royal City. In Yudu Royal City stood a Yudu beast that was slightly smaller in size, but the waves of demonic power were extremely dense. It was a powerful Yudu beast that was no inferior to Qingyuan Yudu and Empty Plains Yudu. Mirage Sun Yudu said solemnly, "Shixing, it has been hard on you." His name was Shixing Yudu, another strong practitioner of the last days realm of the Yudu race. He revealed his true form in Yudu Royal City, and the markings on his body that were like starlight flashed continuously. He opened his mouth to spit out streams of light that were like essence blood. They scattered in the sky above Yudu Royal City before burning up, causing the silver-white light that shrouded Yudu Royal City to become even more dazzling. Countless silver light pierced through the world, and descended into the void at this moment. They were received by the silver shadow above Mirage Sun Yudu's head to bless Mirage Sun Yudu's body. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a roar, and the demonic power on his body surged furiously again. A black profound light shot out from the heart of his brows and shook the void of heaven and earth. An unprecedentedly powerful Yudu profound light burst forth, and a layer of silver light appeared on the surface of the black light. Countless stars rose and fell continuously. Lin Feng looked at Mirage Sun Yudu, who had guided the power of Yudu Royal City to bless himself. His expression was calm as usual, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He raised Heaven Punishing Sword high up in his right hand and pointed it at the sky. On Jade Capital Mountain, the branches of the mystic heavenly treasures swayed continuously, and the seven-colored radiance fused with the chaotic light of the extreme of heaven that was hard to understand. They then poured into the purple chi of the heavens and transformed into auspicious clouds that were like jade. The long river of time that the bell of creation had manifested was interdependent with the mountains and waters of Jade Capital Mountain, and its power endlessly blessed Lin Feng's body. Under the shroud of the jade-colored auspicious clouds, the life and death formation of heaven and earth also started to rotate and transform into boundless radiance. Above the life and death formation of heaven and death formation, the baleful aura was astonishing. Countless jet-black light swords formed an extremely ruthless and terrifying sword formation that gathered the malevolent aura of heaven and destroyed the world. It was none other than the Heaven Punishing Sword formation. The power of the sword formation completely fused with the Heaven Punishing Sword in Lin Feng's hand, and the power between them grew continuously. Black and white divine light shone around Lin Feng's body and transformed into countless clouds and mists that filled the void. It was as though countless gods had descended and were singing together. The boundless void of the universe was covered by the vortex formed by the malevolent aura. The void collapsed involuntarily, and the stars shattered into pieces. Even the boundaries between the void and the boundless world were gradually becoming blurry, as though they were heading towards the end of the road. The five seas, Mysterious Sea, Empty Sea, Netherworld Sea, Sanctuary Sea, and Star Sea trembled together and created new waves. Meanwhile, the Spirit Sea that seemed to be everywhere transformed into a sky full of light that flickered continuously, and was filled with hostility. Lin Feng's sword slashed down, and the malevolent aura vortex that covered the void was activated. Together, it transformed into a world-destroying blade that slashed towards Mirage Sun and Yudu. The ruthless blade even shrouded Green Peak Yudu and the other great demons of Yudu within it. The sword that seemed to want to destroy the creation of heaven and earth forcefully split apart Mirage Sun and Yudu's Yudu Xianhua, that was strengthened by the power of Yudu Royal City. Countless black and silver lights seemed to raise a meteor shower that affected the entire universe. They flickered and shattered continuously, and countless starlight was destroyed. The brilliance of the great Tao withered. The broken horn of Yudu Emperor Celestial Sea flashed with purple light again, but the purple mist that it had transformed into was also instantly torn apart. Mirage Sun and Yudu gave a miserable grunt, and numerous wounds appeared on his body. One of the 3 horns on his head was sliced off. Silver fur that was like a ray of light floated everywhere in the void, and purple blood that was flashing with black markings filled the sky. The silver shadow above his head twisted violently, as though there were ripples spreading out on a calm surface. Above Yudu Royal City in the distant dimensional world, the black fog that shrouded it was split apart by the malevolent sword will. The majestic silver light that rushed into the sky shattered, and light rained down from the sky. Shi Xingyo's body trembled violently, and light spread out from his body. Every pore on his body seemed to be spewing blood. As Mirage Sun and Yudu roared, he swept up Green Crest Yudu and the rest that had escaped from the divine land, and escaped through the void. His body transformed into flowing light and rushed into the silver shadow above his head, escaping with extreme speed. However, his body suddenly stopped, and despair appeared on the face of Hollow Plane Yudu, who was captured by his demonic power. The ring on his finger flickered, and it attracted countless sword lights that had spread out in the surroundings to attack again. Mirage Sun and Yudu, who were suppressed by Lin Feng's sword force, couldn't protect Hollow Plane Yudu. They could only watch as Hollow Plane Yudu was pierced by countless sword lights. The elder of Yudu clan, whose abilities surpassed even those of the great sage and Kunlong king, was even older than Mirage Sun and Yudu. He was a great demon of Yudu in the last days realm, and Hollow Plane Yudu, but at that moment he was slain by Lin Feng. Lin Feng held the sword in his right hand, and with a sweep of his left hand, he fixed Hollow Plane Yudu and the ring in place. The tip of the sword continued to sweep and chase after Mirage Sun and Yudu through the silver shadow, rushing into the dimensional world. The World Annihilation Divine Sword descended, and a corner of the huge Yudu royal city suddenly crumbled. The royal city of the ancestral land of Yudu clan, which was even stronger than Spirit Abyss Mountain Range, crumbled with one sword from Lin Feng. 12 Mirage Son of Yudu? When you have the ability of 11 heavenly seas of Yudu, come and find me. You now can't do it. The world passage created by the silver shadow was completely destroyed, and Lin Feng's voice gradually dissipated in the sky above Yudu Royal City. However, it seemed to be ringing in the ears of all the Yudu beasts, and it was hair-raising. Chapter 1257. The passage of light and shadow was completely destroyed, and the void collapsed. The Yudu race, from the current clan master, Huanri Yudu, all retreated to the medium-sized world where Yudu Royal City was. Empty Plains Yudu was slashed by Lin Feng's extermination sword will, leaving only his corpse behind. The great demons of the Dharma-ending realm were one with heaven and earth, and their connection with the boundless world was extremely close. The slaying of any great demon of the Dharma-ending realm would shake heaven and earth. Although Empty Plains Yudu was limited by the ring, and was in an extremely weak state, his slaying by Lin Feng also caused the boundless world to shake violently. The power of the boundaries twisted and shattered, as though a part of the boundless world was also injured by Lin Feng's sword, and it would take a long time for it to heal. Lin Feng opened his palm, and streams of purple qi floated out, sucking Empty Plains Yuda's corpse. He held the corpse of the great demon of the Dharma-ending realm in one hand, and the heaven-punishing sword in the other, standing calmly in the void. He didn't say anything, but when he looked around, everyone in the world felt as though they were under the gaze of that calm gaze. A terrifying vortex of evil air covered the sky, and it circled above Lin Feng's head slowly as though it was going to swallow the world. At that moment, above the vast land of infinite wasteland, the void broke open, and 2 huge figures appeared. They were originally escaping through the void and rushing towards the divine land, but now they stopped at the same time. One was a huge black ape with red eyes that seemed to be able to support heaven and earth. It was a giant white ape with 4 fiery red legs and eyes that shone with green light. They were the 2 strong demons of the Dharma-ending realm of the primordial devil ape race, the Great Sage and Great Sage Zhu Yan. The effect of the heaven-severing realm at the Spirit Abyss Mountain Range had ended, and the 2 great demons of the ape race were finally able to break free, killing their way out of the Spirit Abyss Mountain Range. However, they could clearly feel the terrifying sword aura of Lin Feng that could shake the boundless world. even in the vast land of infinite wasteland. The two demons couldn't help but stop at the same time. He swung his sword 4 times in a row. Every time he swung his sword, the expressions of the celestial reaching saint and the great Saint Zhuyan changed. Rage and resentment turned into shock and astonishment. Shock and astonishment turned into fear and dread and dread turned into frustration and helplessness. In the end, peace was restored. However, in this peace there was a sense of loss and dejection, which was rare for the celestial reaching sage and Zhuyan great saint. Zhuyan the great sage laughed bitterly and turned to look at the great sage. Unless His Majesty Divine Abyss is resurrected, or if one of us can reach the level of His Majesty Divine Abyss in the past, we won't be able to get back at him. The great sage's face was as dark as still water. Scarlet light flickered in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. Great Saint Zhuyan looked at him and continued. Not to mention revenge, the current spiritual abyss mountain is not strong enough to resist the attack of the celestial sect master alone. You and I have left the mountain now, and we can't even resist one sword of his. Hearing this, the great sage first snorted coldly, then looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. Then he turned around with a sullen face and broke through the void again, returning to the Spirit Abyss Mountain. Children, quickly return to the Spirit Abyss Mountain. We can't stay here for a moment. All of you, return to the mountain immediately. Zhuyan the great sage shook his head and also let out a long sigh. He also turned into a stream of light, broke through the void, and returned to the Spirit Abyss Mountain. Finally, when the effect of the sky-severing boundary disappeared, they could go out and kill in all directions. The two experts of the primordial demonic ape clan, who had been suppressing their anger and resentment, could only return to the ancestral land with their tails between their legs. This feeling of crushing one's teeth and swallowing it down one's stomach was truly indescribable with words. But what made the omnipotent sage and the great sage Zhuyan even more furious was that at this moment, they were even secretly rejoicing in their hearts that the people who faced the peerless sharpness of Lin Feng's Heaven Destroyer sword after it was unsealed were the other demon race and human race powerhouses, and not the two of them. What was even more vexing was that they were still worried about how they could resist Lin Feng if he came to the Spirit Abyss Mountain again. For the Great Sage and Zhuyan the Great Sage, the war between the two realms that almost affected the entire Great Heaven primordial world had already ended before they officially joined. Only they knew what was good or bad about it. However, compared to the demonic ape clan, the dragon clan in the mysterious sea was even more vexed and furious. Although they had killed Dao Master Qing Yi of the Taishu Temple, and the ruler of the Great Qin Dynasty, Stonefeather, and caused the Great Qin Dynasty to lose the immortal Dragon City, it was hard to say that the Dragon Clan had gained any substantial benefits from the war between the two realms. On the contrary, the Yuan Dragon King was injured, the Blue Sky Dragon King died, and the Flame-Flowing Dragon King died. The other experts of the Dragon Clan who were of lower realms also died in large numbers. The vitality of the entire Dragon Clan was greatly damaged. The people who brought such heavy losses to them were Lin Feng and his subordinate, Xianmen Tianzong. In addition to the ancestral crocodile Great Sage's death, the blow that Lin Feng and his disciple dealt to the Dragon Clan had far exceeded the sum of all the losses that the Dragon Clan had suffered in the past thousands of years after the war between the two realms. To the proud Dragon Clan, this made them furious, but there was nothing they could do. The sword that Lin Feng used to split the mysterious sea and injure the Yuan Dragon King made them realize that it was a power that was on par with the perfect Haotian mirror. In fact, its attacking power might even be stronger. After Lin Feng's sword swept through the Great Heaven primordial world, even though the Dragon Clan was furious, they couldn't take the initiative to take revenge. Not only that, but Shenlong King, who had brought great pressure to Zhu Yi in the southern wasteland of the Divine Land, immediately retreated from the battle after Lin Feng split the mysterious sea and returned to Infinite Wasteland. Other than the Dragon Clan and the Primordial Devil Ape Clan, the three strongest demon clans in Infinite Wasteland, the Yudu clan also suffered heavy losses. The Yudu clan, which had great ambitions to return to the boundless world, was known as the strongest demon clan. Ever since they appeared in the world, they had been crushing everything in their way. They were invincible, causing the entire divine land to tremble under their might. But in the end, the Yudu race suffered the most. Even though the only top-notch great demon that had truly fallen was Kongyuan Yudu, he was a great demon on the last day's realm, and his battle prowess had already surpassed all the strong practitioners of the dragon race that had fallen. Even the Yudu race, which had many strong practitioners, was heartbroken because of this. But all the strong practitioners of Yudu, including Mirage Sun and Yudu, could only bear with it and secretly lick their wounds. On the White Cloud Mountain, Dao Venerable Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, Lin Daohan, Dao Venerable Qing Ning, Fu Yunkong, and the others had regained their composure, but their gazes were extremely solemn. Everyone was silent. Above the divine land, Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and the others who had gotten rid of Yuda's pursuit felt the terrifying power in the endless void outside the myriad domains. Instead, they all smiled. Although Great Sage Lu Yuan was seriously injured and grimaced in pain, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. At the same time, he rejoiced in his heart. The depressed feelings of being captured and betrayed were completely swept away. He even felt that he had made an extremely wise decision. Silently standing beside Shi Tianhao, Chan Yubei Rong's gaze shifted between the endless void above his head and the direction of the White Cloud Mountain in the distance. He thought to himself, the divine land is really going to change this time. The same thought emerged in more than one person's mind at this moment. In the West Hill City, the new emperor of the Great Qin Dynasty, Shi Zongtang, and a group of strong practitioners of the Great Qin Dynasty sat in the somewhat dilapidated palace hall, with extremely complicated expressions. In the Heavenly Thunder Hall on the Purple Cloud Peak of the Thunder Mountain Range, where the mountain gate of the Purple Cloud Path was located, Dao Venerable Thundercloud, the pale and seriously injured Dao Venerable Blue Thunder, and the other elders of the Purple Cloud Path sat opposite each other. Dao Venerable Thundercloud stood up from his seat and said slowly, "The situation of the war between the two worlds has changed again. I don't need to stay here anymore. Send people from the sect to the vast land of infinite wasteland with me." Dao Venerable Blue Thunder and the others also stood up and nodded in agreement. Dao Venerable Thundercloud continued, "Senior Brother Blue Thunder, rest well. After this battle, I will personally go to the Kunlun mountain range." At the same time, Sword Venerable Tiangang, who had rushed back to the southern wilderness from Mount Shu, only had time to watch Shenlong King leave. Silently he stood in the void, motionless like a statue. He didn't even need to look in the direction of White Cloud Mountain. As long as he looked up, he could feel the terrible chi of heaven and earth sweeping in the endless void, which seemed to cover the vast thousand worlds. Sword Venerable Tiangang was expressionless. His eyes were firm and he didn't speak for a long time. Outside the great Kiliacosm, in a dimensional realm, there was a Buddha sitting in the void, surrounded by boundless Buddhist light. The Buddha's body was like glass and he had 48,000 arms. When he opened his arms, there seemed to be a star flashing in the palm of each hand. The Buddha looked calm and expressionless, but if you looked closely, he seemed to be smiling. He looked into the distance, as if his eyes had passed through the endless void. His eyes were like flowing water. "I don't know about this change. The master of the Xianmen is not from Tianyuan, and his sword is not from Tianyuan. What on earth?" This Buddha was the future Buddha, the future star-glazed Buddha master. Even he had been paying attention to the progress of the war between the two worlds, and the result was far beyond his expectation. Years ago, when Lin Feng came to Mount Shu, he used his sky-crushing sword to destroy the immortal sky sword of Mount Shu, and finally succeeded in refining the sky-crushing sword. At that time, the sky-crushing sword shocked the entire divine land, and even the vast thousand wasteland. It was recognized as the imperfect Haotian mirror of the Taishu Temple. The mirror of the Taishu Temple and the sword of Xianmen Tianzong became the two most powerful treasures in the great Tianyuan world. However, on the day the sword was refined, the sky-crushing sword was sealed again by Lin Feng, and it had never been unsealed since. Strictly speaking, since the day the sky-crushing sword was refined, no one had truly seen its sharpness. This time, however, it was truly unsheathed for the first time. Lin Feng's four swords swept through heaven and earth. The first sword defeated the current clan master of the Yudu race, the strongest individual in the entire demon race, 12 Yudu illusory sons. The second sword resolved the only chance for the dragon race, and the king of the underworld to seize the Haotian mirror. It then traversed the two realms and the entire mysterious sea, nearly severing the bloodline of the king of the underworld. The third sword shook the mysterious sea, one of the 7 seas of Tianyuan, which was controlled by the strong practitioners of the dragon race. It forcefully split the mysterious sea and injured the clan master of the dragon race, Tenryugen. The fourth sword fought the Yudu race again, slaughtering the empty Yudu, heavily injuring the 12 Yudu illusory sons, and destroying a corner of Yudu royal city. Lin Feng's 4 swords determined the fate of the human race in the war between the two worlds. Chapter 1258. Future Constellation. Glazed Buddha Master's gaze flickered as he savored Lin Feng's peerless sword, which seemed to have destroyed heaven and earth, bringing the end of the world and the end of thousands of great Daos. In terms of destructive power and attack power, it had completely surpassed his current body, like when Gautama Buddha had entered the Dead Sea in the past. Such power had to be taken seriously by future Constellation Glazed Buddha Master, not to mention the past, present, and future of Lin Feng and the Heaven Punishment Sword. Even to him, it was a blur of chaos. The void split open, and a handsome young monk in gray walked out. He put his palms together and bowed to future Constellation Glazed Buddha Master. Greetings, Buddha. This young monk in gray was the great demon Golden Cicada, who had been in hiding for a long time. Golden Cicada sighed slightly and said, I thought there would be some time before the Master of Mystic Gate's sword reappeared. The situation was critical, and the Master of Mystic Gate would at most unseal his Heaven Punishment Sword in advance. Who would have thought that he would succeed at this time? Future Constellation Glazed Buddha Master said indifferently. Next, the situation changed by Yuda's return to the boundless world will be reversed again. Golden Cicada replied, Disciple will be careful. Future Constellation Glazed Buddha Master nodded. Golden Cicada, take Peacock and leave first. He had 48,000 arms, and one of them stretched out. He opened his palm and a ball of light flew out. Within the ball of light, a white-robed monk was sitting cross-legged. 5-colored treasure light shone behind him, but the waves of power coming from him were demon power. However, the white-robed monk's palms formed a mudra, and Buddhist magic power flowed out continuously. Although it was still very weak and insignificant compared to the demon power, it was gradually growing. Even in human form, Golden Cicada could recognize him at a glance. This great demon was the strongest under Golden Rock Sage in the past, the first tribulation great demon, Great Sage Peafowl. This great demon's gaze was calm and peaceful, just like Golden Cicada. At this moment he had actually converted to Buddhism, and was practicing Dharma with future Constellation Glazed Buddha Master. Golden Cicada was not surprised by this. Great Sage Peafowl was meditating and cultivating, and had no intention of stopping. He took the ball of light wrapped around Great Sage Peafowl from the future Glazed Buddha Lord, then bowed to the future Glazed Buddha Lord and said, Your disciple is going. With that, Golden Cicada turned into a beam of golden light, and left this medium-class world. The future Glazed Buddha Master of the future Constellation looked tranquil. His eyes slowly closed as he pondered and deduced. Taishu Temple did not lose the Haotian mirror, but it can no longer maintain the situation of two poles with Xianmen Tianzong. In the endless void, besides Lin Feng, there were no other enemies in front of him. The terrifying vortex of evil qi gradually disappeared. Lin Feng put away his sword and stood upright. His body shrunk and he landed back on Mount Yujing. Mount Yujing returned to the divine land. Although the sharp blade that seemed to hang high above the universe had temporarily disappeared, the situation in the great heaven primordial world was completely different. The Yudu race was defeated by Lin Feng. The primordial celestial dragon race could only defend the Xianhai Sea. The primordial demon ape race retreated to the Spirit Abyss mountain range. And the 3 strongest races of Infinite Wasteland retreated in defeat. The strong humans of the divine land began to blow the horn to counterattack. Although Lin Feng stayed in the divine land, under the leadership of the cultivators of Xianmen Tianzong, The strong humans stirred up a frenzy that swept across Infinite Wasteland. In the past, the Divine Land was in short supply, but Infinite Wasteland was rich in resources that were beneficial for the human race to refine artifacts and elixirs, or to assist in cultivation. These resources were collected by the human cultivators. Many of the medium-class worlds and foreign lands that were originally occupied by the demon race were also occupied by the human cultivators. The Heavenly Sword Sect, Thunderbolt Sword Sect, Celestial Sword Sect, and other sword sects had suffered heavy losses due to the change in the immortal heaven of Great Beginning sword formation. Now they were collecting materials wantonly to make up for their losses. The Great Qin Empire did the same, following closely behind to counterattack Infinite Wasteland. As the three strongest races retreated, the other demon races retreated step by step. It wasn't hard for them to make a choice between keeping their people and losing their land or losing both. In this war between the two worlds, the biggest change wasn't just in the fight for resources. Infinite Wasteland wasn't really barren. It was just that the flow of spirit qi wasn't suitable for human cultivators, but more suitable for the demon race. However, powers like Xianmen Tianzong, Purple Cloud Dao, Northern Militant Royal Court, and the Great Zhou Empire all began to forcefully seize some grotto heavens and treasure lands on Infinite Wasteland. These powers all had strong practitioners with sufficient cultivation and resources to try to change the environment of a particular treasure land. After a certain period of time, these places could be turned into blessed lands suitable for human cultivators to cultivate. In the past, the problem with the establishment of these grotto heavens and treasure lands wasn't how to change them, but how to defend them in the future. Therefore, apart from Taishu Temple's Taihua Mountain and Xianmen Tianzong Shi Tianhao's Infinite Wasteland Villa, no one else could occupy land in Infinite Wasteland. At the same time, Taihua Mountain and Infinite Wasteland Villa also made their own preparations just in case. Taihua Mountain and White Cloud Mountain were connected by a stable realm passage, so that White Cloud Mountain could reinforce Taihua Mountain at any time. It was only when Yudu descended during the war between the two worlds that the realm passage was destroyed by Taishu Temple. Shi Tianhao's Infinite Wasteland Villa wasn't far from the entrance of the realm passage leading to the Divine Land in Infinite Wasteland. Back then, they had occupied this territory right under the nose of the demon race. They had originally planned to use it as bait in the war between the two worlds. It was just that the direction of the war between the two worlds had changed after the war between the two worlds. Now, with the victory of the human cultivation world in the war between the two worlds, the various powers began to occupy the blessed lands and grotto heavens in Infinite Wasteland. With Lin Feng holding the fort, the strong practitioners of the demon race could only grit their teeth and bear with it before they could defend themselves. It wasn't just the places occupied by Xianmen Tianzong. If the powers that were on good terms with Xianmen Tianzong were to be attacked by the demon race, it was very likely that they would attract Xianmen Tianzong's help or even revenge. Even the three great demon races, Yudu, Heaven Dragon and Devil Ape, had to think twice before acting. Under the pressure of the human cultivation world, the demon race, led by the three great races, finally began to gradually unite. In a situation where there was no Saint Emperor of the demon race to command, this could be said to be unprecedented. Green Crest Yudu led a portion of the strong practitioners of the Yudu race to descend on Infinite Wasteland and occupy a blessed land. Among the strong practitioners of the dragon race, Kunlun Dragon King came from the mysterious sea to meet with Green Crest Yudu. The great sage of the primordial devil ape race stayed in the Spirit Abyss mountain range, while great sage Zhu Yin also hurried there. With the second in command of the three great demon races gathered, the advancement of the human cultivation world slowed down. Sun Mirage, Yudu, Yuanlong King, and the great sage didn't act rashly. Lin Feng also remained on Yujing Mountain, floating in the sky of the Divine Land. Both sides gradually formed a tacit understanding, and the most intense and cruel frontal battle of the war between the two worlds gradually came to an end. They entered the follow-up stage of the war, where both sides intertwined and clashed continuously. However, the human race pushed forward greatly, placing the battlefield completely on Infinite Wasteland. The territory ruled by the demon race was greatly reduced. In the process of occupying the blessed land and grotto heavens of infinite wasteland, the other human forces began to gradually lean toward Xianmen Tianzong. Lin Feng's deterrence was unparalleled at the current stage. However, at this stage of the war, many people had other ideas. From the Heavenly Sword sect, the Heavenly Sword Venerable and Old Sword Immortal came to Infinite Wasteland at the same time. The Heavenly Sword Venerable looked down at the beautiful spirit mountain occupied by the Heavenly Sword sect. Silently he said, "The heaven-punishing sword of the Master of Xianmen is a sword that can destroy the world. It's unimaginable to wield this sword without being injured by its edge. Now it seems that the Master of Xianmen has a limit when wielding this sword. He can't use it too many times in a row." Upon hearing his words, Old Sword Immortal nodded. That terrifying sword intent. Just feeling its existence is enough to make one feel fear. It's like seeing the destruction of the great Heaven Yuan world. To be honest, apart from the Master of Xianmen, I really can't think of anyone who can wield this sword. That sword is different from the Haotian mirror. It's not something that can be wielded with a high enough cultivation. The Heavenly Sword Venerable said. That's right. Furthermore, even if the Master of Xianmen has a limit, no one can control that sword once he breaks through it. The Master of Xianmen will suffer a backlash, and his enemies will also suffer. Dying together is already the best outcome. However, the problem is that no one knows where the limit is. It's very likely that they will be killed by the Master of Xianmen in vain. The Old Sword Immortal laughed bitterly. The Master of Xianmen is unfathomable. His strength is unfathomable. Anyway, I definitely don't believe that 4 swords is his limit. The Heavenly Sword Venerable said. Of course not. The Haotian mirror is still in the hands of the Taishu Temple. The Old Sword Immortal suddenly sighed. Even if the Haotian mirror is still in the hands of the Taishu Temple, it's difficult for them to compete with Xianmen Tianzong now. They can only defend their own sect. If they can wait until the Haotian mirror returns to perfection, they might still have the strength to fight. However, who can say for sure what will happen in the future? Just like before, no one had expected that Xianmen Tianzong could actually reach such a height in such a short period of time. The Heavenly Sword Venerable's expression was calm. His eyes flickered slightly, but he had no intention of objecting. At this moment, on the vast land of the Divine Land, almost everyone had the same thought. The Taishu Temple, which had dominated the throne of the number 1 sect in the Divine Land for countless years, was finally surpassed by a new force at this moment. Even if it was only at this moment, and the future was hard to predict, no one could deny this fact. The throne of the number 1 sect in the Divine Land now belonged to Xianmen Tianzong. On the Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng sat calmly on the top of the Xiantian Treasure's branch. The heaven-punishing sword that everyone feared and revered had now reverted back to the appearance of Xianli, standing silently behind Lin Feng. At that moment, a system notification sounded in Lin Feng's mind. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.